Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alex Boone, and I'm the CEO for the Entrepreneur Challenge. Thank you all for coming and joining us here today. It's my absolute pleasure to be able to welcome all of you that have been with us for some time now, as well as those who are new to our community. Today, we are celebrating our 10th year anniversary, and we're very proud to host it today here at Qualcomm with all of you. Just before we get started, I'd like to express my gratitude for all of you who are so generously helped us to make this event come possible and come together smoothly. Greg Horowitz, Olin Hyde, Danny Katishian, Rajesh Grover, Jesus Garcia, Luyanda Mdanda, Brianna Weisinger, and Nikki Truitt. We couldn't have done it without you. Tonight, I'm going to give you an overview of where our organization stands after 10 years, followed by a keynote from Brad Kism, our very first Entrepreneur Challenge winner, and then 6 presentations from the top 2 companies in high tech, clean tech, and life tech, as well as 2 new awards to honor individuals in our community. So let me tell you a little bit more about myself. I'm a current UC San Diego Flex MBA 2018 student at the Rady School of Management. I graduated from UCSD with a bachelor's in bioengineering in 2015 from the Jacobs School of Engineering. I'm a serial entrepreneur, an Ironman triathlete, and I've worked for startup companies like LeadCrunch. I volunteer for the Entrepreneur Challenge. Well, technically I get paid $1 just so someone can blame me. But I volunteer because even though I lose my ability to compete for my own company in these competitions, I've received so much more from the help from the community members for my business. I truly care about giving back to this community. In fact, for both of my companies, I've joined the Pledge 1% movement to give back 1% of my equity to the Entrepreneur Challenge and other initiatives. Pledge 1% was started by concept Mark Benioff with his company to pledge 1% profit, equity, 1% product, and 1% time. As a San Diego ambassador for Pledge 1%, I encourage all of you to join me and take the pledge if you are a founder or executive, both small and large companies. Go to P1 today to find out more information. Our organization would not be possible without 2 components. The first is people. The second is community sponsors. This year, we've had an amazing sponsors who believe in our mission to cultivate the entrepreneurial mindset. This includes 2 of the largest and longest since founding of our organization as IPO sponsors. The first is DLA Piper, who's been providing our finalists with corporate services. The second is Joan and Erwin Jacobs Foundation, who all of you know has done absolutely incredible things for the San Diego community. We're grateful to have them as supporters. This year, we also have new partners, Kenobi Martins, as our Series B, Series B sponsor who will be providing our winners with intellectual property services. Corporations that have sponsored in the past include Johnson & Johnson, who's setting the pace for life tech innovations, Union Bank, who's a premier bank, Qualcomm, the leader in wireless technology that has done incredible things for the city of San Diego, ResMed, who is improving quality of life by preventing chronic diseases, and Viasat, whose mission is to make the internet possible, accessible, affordable, and secure to everyone. It was founded actually by a UCSD alum. We also have the basement and undergraduate level UC San Diego incubator that's started by UCSD alum, as well as current and past companies, they have current and past companies in tonight's finals, as well as the Rady School of Management and the Jacobs School of Engineering, who have combined cover 100% of the finalists. Both schools have been producing amazing talent for our competitions, and recently, they have created joint programs to encourage commercialization, such as the Institute for the Global Entrepreneurs. New sponsors include Oracle, a leading platform in engineering systems, Medtronic, a medical technology global leader, Atlassian, a leader in software tools for development, Twilio, a leader in cloud communication for SMS, voice, and messaging applications, Illumina, the leading sequencing company, Thermo Fisher Scientific, the leader in laboratory research supplies and equipment, Biocom, the premier and largest life science association for California, Yelp, connecting people with great local businesses, Salesforce, the world's leading customer relationship management solution, Coefficient Services, a premier San Diego accounting firm and finance services for small and medium-sized businesses, Google, the world's leading making the world's information accessible and useful through the next generation cloud services, as well as Bella Vista, which is tonight's cater. And also, you have Solar Rain, which is producing sustainable water and packaging. If you're a student in the audience, be sure to look at these companies because not only do they believe in corporate social responsibility, they also have an entrepreneurial culture that fosters entrepreneurship, intrapreneurship, and innovation. I also happen to know that they're actively hiring for the brightest talent in San Diego. Now, if you're from a company or a foundation that is not listed as a sponsor, I would love to spend some time with you to find out the unique ways that we can partner for both our organizations. My information is on the back of the pamphlet, so you can feel free to email me anytime. What's amazing and unique about our organization is that we give over 75% of our proceeds directly to the entrepreneurs, and we're constantly finding new ways to grow the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Next year, we plan to spend money on new programs, like a program called Angel Grants, which is to help turn $100,000 into $1 million for several entrepreneurs. It's designed to connect founders with grant writers, both volunteer and paid by the Entrepreneur Challenge, to get grants that replace or fill a typical angel round to give companies a better chance to scale faster. If you know any grant writers that would love to be a part of this program or donate some of their time or reduce fees, please reach out to me. And the second part is people. Over the years, we've had an amazing group of students, volunteers to run the organization. We're completely student-run, from the CEOs to the directors. In honor of their work they have done, I'd like to list off a few key name individuals: Adam Young, Misha Erganishi, Daniel Kagan, Helen Saad, Mahet Parlock, Alvin Cabrera, Rajesh Grover, Kevin Liang, Che Wang, Phil Brezhan, Yuen Kwao, David Manley, Corbin Clausen, Peter Butler, Michael Benchmull, Jason Steiner, Danny Katishian, Tom Cohen, Kanan Azam, John Yamauchi, Patrick Kelly, David Eichhorn, Peter Preuss, Ian McNarlin, Michael Hayden, and Zeke Bortoff. And in celebration, I know it's a long list of names, that's how many entrepreneurs, that's how many student volunteers that we've had for our organization. I really want to honor them as they've really dedicated the time to make this entrepreneur organization grow. And in celebration of our 10th year anniversary, I'd like to thank two key individuals in particular that made a difference in the beginning of the organizations. Those individuals are Nikki Truitt and Neha Rani. Nikki Truitt, if you'd raise your hand. Patadia, thank you. It is an honor to have you not only continuing to support after 10 years, but to be the vision that all the volunteers look up to, so hope to be where you are one day. Thank you. So one of the things that we've decided to do this year after 10 years is turn our student group into our own nonprofit organization entity to further the growth that we want to have for helping the entrepreneurs. With this, we've created the E Foundation, our nonprofit, that we've also continued to have the student group on campus. And the idea for the E Foundation is to grow our presence not only at UCSD, but also in other universities to create local student-run entrepreneur organization just like ours so that they can take the curriculum as well as all of the network that we've been able to build. So with that, I wanted to give you a highlight of the state of the entrepreneurial ecosystem at UC San Diego. We've had a lot of new initiatives happening on campus. One of them is the IGE, which is a joint program that I mentioned. And other interesting things going on is new funds that have interest in our companies. One of them is Alma Ventures. They invest solely in UCSD companies. They're founded by two UCSD alumni. And the other is Contrary Capital, which sees the university as an untapped resource. And so they see as the UC San Diego ecosystem as a hotbed for entrepreneurs. And another one that I've had a pleasure to help and be a part of is a new biodesign incubator program called Blue Link, which was actually being instructed by one of our past finalists, Garrett Smith, his company Nasio. So he actually went through the biodesign at Stanford, and it's mimicked after that program. So this is a really exciting time for the UCSD entrepreneur ecosystem. So not only do I urge you to continue to come to events like these, but also check out a lot of the things happening at the university. And one of the things that has been very true and dear to me has been the time that I've given back as a volunteer. And what I've seen in my time is that many individuals in the community want to find ways to make their time very valuable and make a big impact. And so I've created this new program, which I call the Volunteer Challenge. So we're challenge all of you to dedicate and pledge to volunteer to help us be mentors, attend events regularly like these, or even helping us connect to potential sponsors and investors for a lot of our companies. So if you're interested in helping take your time and spend it to something that's going to be extremely valuable for our entrepreneurs, go to the website, theentrepreneurchallenge.org/volunteer to fill out the pledge form now. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our keynote of the night, Brad Kism. So this year is a special kind of celebration, not only because we're celebrating our 10th year anniversary, but also we're celebrating the success of our very first winner, Lumidyne Technologies. Legend has it that Brad actually gave the best pitch presentation the Entrepreneur Challenge has ever seen in 10 years. So 2017 finalists, try to outdo Brad this time. So Brad, he's an angel investor, entrepreneur, and serves as an advisor to several companies. He's a former CEO of Lumidyne and co-founder of Lumidyne Technologies, which is a MEMS inertial sensor company acquired by Google for $85 million. And I'm sure Brad can tell you more about that. While at Google, Brad served as the product manager for the technology acquired from Lumidyne. And prior to Lumidyne, Brad actually held positions in management positions at the U.S. Space and Naval Warfare Defense Systems Command, SPAWAR, as well as semiconductor manufacturer ST Microelectronics. He holds 4 patents, 3 issued and 1 pending, as well as 3 degrees, an MBA from SDSU, a BS from electrical engineering, and BS in mathematics. So let's give a round of applause for Brad.
Thank you, Alex. Well, good evening, everybody. It's an honor to be here. It's really an exciting opportunity to come back and finish the story that we started 10 years ago. Didn't know I was going to get this opportunity, but what I wanted to do, I was thinking about, I want to do more than just talk about, what happened to Lumidyne after the competition. And for the few of you that were actually here 10 years ago, you might be thinking, I don't remember the name Lumidyne. That's because during the competitions, we were Omega Sensors. I don't know if that triggers any memories or not, but we did have to change our name after the business plan competition. But what I thought I would do tonight is show how the business plan competition process itself came back to benefit the company. So I'm going to tell you the story of Lumidyne after the competition, but I'm also going to tell you how the business plan competitions directly impacted our success. And I would actually go so far as to say that our success, and you can decide afterwards if you agree with me or not, but that our success was heavily, heavily influenced by the competition process. So, in the beginning, now, so you have to start off a speech with some beginning, you got to give a little background information, right? So in the beginning, so this goes back to prior to when I even decided that I was going to start a business. So I was an engineer at SPAWAR, and I had a very good job, and I was faced with this very difficult decision. A lot of you during the competition process can probably relate. Those of you who have gone and done your own careers, you can probably think back to a time where you had this kind of a debate. So here I was working as a government engineer. I had a very good job. I got to do all sorts of exciting things with very interesting technology. I had job security. I was on a nice little career path, and I was thinking about throwing it all away, potentially, to go after a very high-risk venture. I mean, 9 out of 10 startups fail, right? So you have to be bad at statistics, basically, to want to go after a new venture. But very high pressure, high stress, and the initial pay is terrible. $0. I made $0 a year for 3 years straight, right? And you're giving up the career path you're on, you're giving that up. So how did I make this difficult decision? Well, like a lot of us, I had always had ambitions and dreams of starting my own company, right? So some of that seed was already there. But I knew that I did not know enough about business to actually start a business. Working as an engineer, you learn a lot of things, but you don't necessarily learn how to run a business. Some people can learn on the job. I'm not one of those. So I went back and got an MBA to sort of bridge the gap between what I didn't know and get to at least hopefully to a point that would be sufficient for starting a business. And it was in my entrepreneurship class with Mr. Bateman, he was the professor of our class, that I was able to make my decision. Mr. Bateman is one of the co-founders of Price Club. He was the number 3 guy, as he would put it. So it was interesting, at the beginning of this semester, he did a survey. And of the survey, he asked all 17 students, who here wants to be an entrepreneur? 14 of the 17 said yes. 2 said no. I said maybe. By the end of the semester, he asked that you did the same survey. Most of the yeses had turned to no's. The no's stayed no's. And I was the only one that went from a negative to a positive, going from a maybe to a yes. But I would argue the reason those of us that changed our minds, the reason we changed our minds was actually for the same reasons. He taught us some very valuable lessons, and one of them was that there is no such thing as a person that has all it takes to willpower a company into success. You can go start one, but if you want to actually have one be successful, it's going to take more than what you bring to the table. Now, I knew it was going to take more than what I brought to the table. So suddenly I realized that, hey, everybody, we're all in the same boat on this. Now, it maybe should have been obvious. Maybe you don't have to get an MBA to learn that. I did. So I learned this lesson that we're all in the same boat. So that leveled the playing field in my mind. But there's another important thing. He taught us the second lesson, that there will be many people that will come along and they will help you with your enterprise. Now, that wasn't an idea that I had thought about before. Right? You don't think about, people just coming out of the woodwork to help you with your business. But he sent this message in a very positive way that as you go down your path, people will show up and they will help you, and you may or may not you may not know them yet. You may not even realize the full extent to how much they helped you until after the fact. So he left us with a message of hope. And it was these 2 things that helped me make my decision to leave my nice, cushy job and go after the not so cushy. So to kind of reinforce this message that you do need outside influences to help you, I picked 5 people that, at least in my mind, they're the iconic example of what a self-made person in America is, right? And so you probably recognize all of these names. If you don't, do not admit that you don't recognize one of them. That'd be very embarrassing, right? So these are all people that, if there are people that you could say, pull themselves up by their bootstraps, self-made people, these would be examples. But each one of these people have credited numerous others with their successes. And so here we have some examples. So Nolan Bushnell he was a founder of Atari. He was one of Steve Jobs' mentors. He was the first person to hire Steve Jobs. He's the person that taught Steve Jobs how to work in the business area. One of the things he's famous for teaching Steve Jobs is to not take no for an answer. Now, Steve Jobs probably had a little bit of that already, but knowing how to use that in the business environment is part of what Nolan taught Steve Jobs. George Washington Carver, he was born into slavery, and yet he became one of the greatest known scientific minds of his time, and is still famous today. But he had a professor, Dr. James Wilson, that was one of the early people to really believe in him and give him the encouragement and the support that he needed. Bill Gates had Ed Roberts. Ed Roberts not only pioneered the field that Gates then brought the software into, but he also served as a mentor to Bill Gates. Walt Disney had Roy Disney. Everybody forgets about Roy Disney, but Roy Disney was the one that behind the scenes was the one that built up the company. Walt had the vision, and he had all the creative ideas. Roy created the background for which those ideas could be brought into reality. Thomas Edison, he is probably the most iconic example of somebody who just makes something of themselves, turns nothing into something. But he had William Morton and a number of other mentors early on. But William was the CEO of a telegraph company who really taught Thomas Edison earlier in his career how to take these technology ideas and turn them into business ideas. So before I go into the Luminine story in terms of what happens after the business plan competitions, just a little bit of background on the company itself. So Luminine, our technology was developed by the US Navy. This is Point Loma. The place where the technology was developed, it was an underground bunker that in the Navy's infinite wisdom decided should be an integrated circuits fabrication facility when they were done having their cannon there. So I got to work in an underground building. The drive to work was amazing. You have the bay on one side, you've got the ocean on the other. Your car gets a great view while you go underground. So working there, I got to see a lot of cool stuff, right? I got to see a lot of really cool technologies, and some of these technologies, I mean, the science behind them, the engineering that it required to make them happen was just very impressive. But they were not anything that you could actually build a business around. There's one technology I saw that was so strong, in my mind at least, that I thought, you could actually build a whole business around this. This isn't just a product line extension or an improvement on something that's existing. This could be a real business. But I wasn't sure, so I was able to take it through, I was doing my MBA at the time, and I actually was able to use this concept as my project in all my classes going forward, and that really helped with a lot of the validation. But with this technology, it was an inertial sensor technology, so accelerometers and gyroscopes, and it benefits a wide range of markets, everything from navigating aircraft all the way down to consumer electronics. So one of the big challenges, and when you've got a product that can go in so many different directions, you have to start someplace, right? So we had to pick a market to go after. And in the course of the MBA process, we found seismic imaging. Now, seismic imaging is a market that most people haven't heard of. It's used by the oil industry to look for oil. It's basically an ultrasound of the Earth. And you use inertial sensors as little miniature seismometers, you put them out in a large array, and you get an image of what's under the Earth, and if you're in the oil industry, you're looking for oil, right? But what was intriguing about this market wasn't just that they could benefit from our technology. What was intriguing was that it had a business problem. See, in this industry, there's about 10 players, plus or minus. And there's two competing technologies. You have geophones, which are sort of the mainstay, the tried and true of the industry. And at the time, accelerometers were being introduced. And all the literature said accelerometers are going to be the future. They're going to take over. It's all going to be accelerometers. The problem was only two companies had accelerometer-based solutions, and the accelerometers they used were exclusive to those companies, meaning the other 8 companies were shut out of what was supposed to be the future of the market. Now, the average revenue for companies in this space is about $100 million at the time. The cost of development for the accelerometer, well, only one of them published their numbers, but the one that published their numbers on what it cost to develop their solution was almost $300 million, out of the reach of the rest of the companies. And here we have a solution. So we found a business problem for which we had a technical solution. Then we entered the business plan competitions. And we ended up doing a number of business plan competitions, 6 in total. This is the order of when we competed. It's not in order of favorites. I would have put UCSD at top, at least for this presentation, right? So we didn't do very well at first, but then we go to Moot Corp, and at the time that was the big fancy competition. So big and fancy that when you win it, you get to ring the opening bell of the NASDAQ Stock Exchange, and that was pretty exciting. You can see us there at the 50K competition with a large cardboard check. It was an incredible experience, but the benefits of the competition go far beyond the cardboard checks you get. But let's not dismiss those cardboard checks. I was going to a job that paid $0. Those checks really helped out. So after the competitions were over, we started getting people that were coming out of nowhere, so to speak, offering to help us out. So 2 examples, we had Dr. Alex Noble and Dr. Stephen Lieberman. They introduced us to an organization called CCAT, the Center for Commercialization of Advanced Technology. CCAT gave us some initial funding. Small dollar amounts, $75,000 here, $50,000 there. But something more important came out of this. We got to meet Dr. Ernie Major. Now, contrary to what this photo might suggest, Dr. Major is actually quite a quite happy guy. Dr. Major works for Lawrence Berkeley National Labs. He's very reputable in the oil and gas space. He was looking for an inertial sensor technology to benefit some of the projects he had been working on. And he couldn't find any. He had contracted out to a company. They surveyed all over the country, all over the world, and they happened to contact CCAT looking to see if there's any companies that might possibly be able to help them out. They almost didn't call CCAT. CCAT was the last organization they called because you don't go to San Diego for this kind of thing. This is more of a Houston kind of a thing, right? But they went ahead and called anyway. We were the last company they spoke with, and we were the only company that had a possibility of benefiting what they were working on. So suddenly, because of the business plan competitions, we had connections with Ernie Major, who had direct connections with the Department of Energy and the National Energy Technology Laboratory, which we ended up getting some funding from. Some other connections, our board of directors, our key people from the board of directors came out as a result of the business plan competitions. Ken Potashner, we were introduced to him by a fellow MBA student who Ken was on his board of directors. I only got to know Robert Schulte because of the business plan competitions. He served as a mock judge. When he heard how we did, he introduced me to Ken, and Ken was instrumental in a lot of the things we did as a company. Linda Spain, she was somebody that came in, she was a judge at one of the competitions. I ended up getting to know her and then eventually invited her to be on the board of directors because she filled in the areas of my greatest weakness. When it came to things like contract law and finance, she was an expert and she really helped out. One of the most interesting people that we met though was Dan Piat. I have him listed as key contact because that's about as well as I can describe him. You'll hear more about him in subsequent slides. Okay, so startup companies, you got to get money, right? So this is the path that Luminine went on. So picture this. You know, we just won the business plan competitions. We got to ring the bell. Now we're going to start raising investor dollars. And we actually use largely the same slide deck that we did for the competitions, because you're really telling that everything we did in the competition was real in terms of what we were presenting. So we could basically repurpose those slides for funding. And this is how it went. So we went to angel investor forums all over the country, starting in September of 2007 all the way until April of 2008. We had very consistent performance. After every single time we'd present, we get all these compliments. Wow, that was a really great presentation. You know, so excited for you guys. You know, I know you guys are going to do great. And the funding we received was also very consistent. $0 from each and every single one of these things. Now, bear in mind, at this time, we had a little bit of CCAP money, but by and large, you know, all these plane tickets, they were coming out of my pocket, right? And I was making $0 a year. And I don't think I mentioned this, but my wife was in med school making -$dollars a year. Okay, now she was gonna make money 6 years later when she was done with residency, but until then, we were trying to balance this negative income, and I'm buying plane tickets. So how did we get our money? We're looking to raise $1.5 million, which is actually a lot from angel investors' point of view, too small for VCs. But over the same time period, we actually did a lot better. This green line, sort of green, represents the money we made over roughly the same time period, or brought in over the same time period. Obviously, this didn't come from those angel investor forums. So where did it come from? This came from friends and family network, but not exclusively. And most of you that are possibly going to be raising money, you might be thinking, well, there's no $1.5 million in my friends and family network. There isn't in mine either. I thought we would get maybe $250,000 out of friends and family. We did quite a bit better than that. But what ended up happening, and I plotted this out in degrees of separation. So friends and family introduced me to people who introduced me to people who introduced me to people, right? And if you look at it from that perspective, well over half of our money came from people that I had never even met. One illustration of this, if we look at this blue dot, that's me. My aunt got very excited. Her nephew was going to start a company. She was all in. She wrote me a check for $50,000. She was an example of a friend or family member that I would never have guessed could write me a check for $50,000. But it turns out she had some family money that I was unaware of, and she was very excited to give me that. She was not my blood relative. My blood relative, my uncle, after some strong encouragement from my aunt, happily invested $25,000. But my aunt wasn't done with my uncle. See, my aunt knew that my uncle had a college roommate he was still good friends with. So my uncle introduced me to Friend. Now, I was on road trip to one of those angel investor forums that you saw before. I had a layover in Phoenix. Friend calls me on the phone and says, I want you to change your flight and have a layover in San Antonio. Well, it's going to cost me $100. So I said, well, sorry. He twists my arm. I end up doing it. He says he would pick me up at the airport. He didn't. I had to take a cab. I'm just seeing the dollar amounts, $100, now it's $125, and he introduces me to his wife. Well, it turns out his wife was a big shot at Capital Global, and she was an investment banker. She had invested $30 million into Analog Devices when Analog Devices was developing their accelerometer. So here we have a extremely high net worth individual with an investment reputation that knows the accelerometer space. What are the odds of that? Now, I met with her. I felt she had read our business plan. She knew it better than I did. She went through the finances. She could do the math in her head so fast, I couldn't keep up with her. And I'm the one that put those finances together. By the time we were done, I felt like I had lost a fist fight, right? I just felt beat up and drained. So fortunately, Friend drives me back to the airport. But wife ended up investing. She calls and invests $100,000. But she wasn't done. She introduced me to her friends. And her friends, the reason you see the 172, the odd dollar amount, that was the guy that closed out our round, self-made billionaire. So previously, I would have told you there's no self-made billionaires in my personal network. I was wrong. There is a self-made billionaire in my network. So that's how we were able to get our $1.5 million despite our lack of performance at the angel forums. And I get a common question that why wouldn't the angel investor forums write us a check? Well, the reason is people that have money usually got it by doing something smart. And when they invest their money, they're going to do something smart, which is they're going to invest in what they know. And we're selling accelerometers, which they had never heard of, to seismic imaging, which they had never heard of. With friends and family, they may not have heard of those things either, but they had heard of me. And so they even though I had never done anything like this, they were willing to place a bet on me, right? And so I'm, we'll be eternally grateful that they did. But we got 1/3 of our round just out of my aunt, which, by the way, is my favorite aunt. And I tell everybody that, including my other aunts. So yeah, 1/3 of our round came from that connection. So back to Ernie Major and the Department of Energy. So we raised our $1.5 million from angel investors, closed that in 2008. A month later, we get $1.2 million from the Department of Energy. Now think back to 2008. First half of the year, everybody's rich, everybody's getting HELOCs, everybody is just spending money like crazy, they're real estate moguls, they're oil barons. Second half of the year was a little different. Everything fell out. Credit markets froze up, real estate went in the toilet. We went into the downturn of the market in a cash-strong position because our plan called for $1.5 million, and guess what? We had 2.7. So we got most of our funding from a strategic partnership. So this was in the oil and gas space. Our business plan basically called for this. If you go back and look at our original business plan, we were going to go after the seismic imaging space, establish a strategic partnership, and that was where the bulk of the development funding was going to come from. So you remember Dan Piat, our key contact? Well, Dan had a software company. He was the CEO of a software company. And he knew the CEOs of every single seismic imaging company. And after I got to know him, he offered, out of kindness, I didn't ask him, he offered to give me CEO level introduction to anybody in the space that I wanted to talk to. So what do you do when that happens? You take him up on that offer. So I got my CEO level introductions. Now all I got was a phone call, but based off the strength of that phone call, they would decide what happens next. So here we were, this little nobody company in California, and I'm getting CEO level access to everybody in Houston that's running these companies. And so all of a sudden, things are different. We're getting taken seriously because when the CEO passes you off onto somebody else for them to check you out, they're going to take that seriously because they need to make sure that they represent well back to their boss, right? So suddenly everybody's taking us seriously. And at this time, Luminine consisted of me full-time. Richard, the co-founder, was still working his day job at the Navy, helping me out when he could. So we wanted to get them to fund our development effort. And so we asked ourselves this question, because when we go talk to these companies, it always went the same way. Hey, this sounds great. Let us know when it's ready. So we needed to get them to fund us. So we asked ourselves this question, how do we get them to fund us? And the answer is you create a situation where they have to fund you. What we did is we went to everybody, and this was the most nerve-wracking thing I've ever done. But we went to everybody and we said, here's how we're going to do it. We're going to sell field of use exclusivity for seismic imaging. In exchange, you pay for the development of the technology. And if you're interested in looking at us, you need to let us know by July. We're going to accept term sheets in November. We'll make our selection. And the only thing we didn't tell them up front was that it's actually first to contract that wins, not first to term sheet. Because and that ended up being important, because after you select the term sheet, then you need to keep some pressure on to close the deal, right? Especially considering these dates. The price of oil went from $140-something a barrel in the summertime to $40-something a barrel in December in the oil industry. Not a good time to be trying to strike up a strategic partnership in that space. And so the way this ended up happening was we got 2.5 term sheets. They turned them in just like students turning in papers. They waited till midnight the night they were due, and then they showed up in my inbox, and yes, I was watching my inbox, waiting carefully to see if they'd show up. We get those term sheets. I say 2.5 because one of them was missing most of its information, or the key information, like dollar amounts, and that was ION. And so I call, we wait a week, we make our decision, I call everybody to let them know that, I can't tell them who we accepted, but I tell them, sorry, we're turning you down, or yes, we've accepted your term sheet. And so what ended up happening there was I'm talking to the chief operations officer at ION and explained that we're going to turn down his offer. He got fired that day. He got fired that day because he lost our deal. And this is when, at this point, we had hired one person, so we're 2.5 people. And a chief operations officer gets fired. Now, the reality is we were just that little tiny straw that broke the camel's back. He was probably going out anyway. But it was, to be in a situation where you realize that your actions, even though it was unintentional, actually cost somebody else their job, that was a real wake-up experience for me. Their CEO flies out. He does all this. We start negotiating. They start aggressively working towards a contract while handling their second rounds of layoffs. And they beat the other company to contract. And so we ended up getting a couple $1 million from ION as a phase 1 contract. So as you can imagine, though, the relationship was a little bit of a roller coaster. They started off with $2.1 million in 2010. The company split. When the company split, we ended up going with the other part, which was Innova. For reasons I'll never fully understand, the person they put in charge of our project at Innova was one of the co-inventors of the technology we were replacing. He was not happy to see us, especially because he had been turned down when he had petitioned to try to do a second spin of second generation of their existing sensor. He got told no because there wasn't enough money. And then guess what? Here's $3.1 million going over to some San Diego startup company. So what ended up happening was we had some Department of Defense funding at the same time. And what we did was we were contributing to this effort. So Innova was going to develop the electronics. We developed the sensor. We get full access to those electronics. We're going to use that combined system to meet our requirements for the Department of Defense. So you probably see where this is going. This is what's called a bad idea. You need to be able to stand alone for each one of your customers, right? You can't be so dependent on somebody else. Well, so the person that was in charge of the project on Innova side, he basically never developed the electronics. We had weekly meetings for 4.5 months where he was reporting to us the progress on the electronics. We had engineering reports, everything, all faked. I never would have believed that a publicly traded company would pull a stunt like this. All they had to do was just, tell us no. They didn't have to give us a $3.1 million contract. But so what ended up happening is we ended up missing on our government contract because we couldn't demonstrate anything. Then trying to do a big scramble because now we don't have free electronics coming anymore. And of course, Innova is not going to sign another contract. But in 2011, we get a $7.5 million contract with ION. How did that happen? Well, as luck would have it, Richard, who is still working at SPAWAR, happened to invent another inertial sensor technology that actually was even more promising than the one we were developing. Now, you typically don't want to switch horses in the middle of a race. That's usually considered a very bad idea. But in this particular case, I was able, because that technology was free and clear of our contract. We licensed that technology. The very next day I went and I met with the CEO of ION, and I told him, listen, out of loyalty, we're offering you first choice at working with us on this technology. You have 2 months to decide, because I need to go peddle this to others if you're not interested. And if you are interested, we're not working with Innova anymore. This has to come back to ION. We got a $7.5 million contract. Unfortunately, Shell wanted in on the deal, and ION told them no. And that unfortunately came back to bite everybody in 2013 when ION ran out of money. So 2012, ION gave us another $4 million. But in 2013, business was terrible for oil exploration. We got transferred back to Nova even though we didn't want to go there. I was able to get 2 large semiconductor companies to be willing to put investment into our company and make the electronics. Nova still declined the project. So, but it was also the same person from before, and he wasn't any happier to see us the next time around. So we unfortunately ended on a low note with this ION relationship, but on the other hand, we got $17 million worth of development funding, almost a third of which was non-dilutive. So from a pure business perspective, very successful product point of view, a little disappointing, so we had to do a product pivot. So come January of 2013, we have 1 year of cash. Our primary funding sources have dried up. You weren't getting any R&D funding from the government at that point, from the DoD side. Sequestration happened. We had a contract in the works that killed that contract. So we needed to change our business plan. Our 2 primary markets we were going after, defense and oil and gas, were not going to be writing us checks anymore. So we did a $5 million equity raise led by Lite-On Semiconductor to pivot our product from being able to serve these high performance markets to move them down to the consumer market. And then we started this is when I got really, really busy. So these are all people, this is a network diagram. What we started doing was very aggressively trying to make ourselves aware, and make entities aware of us that were either in or serve the consumer space. Okay, so obviously I've redacted all the names for NDA purposes, but this was an actual slide from one of our board meetings where these were all real contacts, and we're on here if we were talking to somebody that was a decision maker level. That was the criteria, right? So we had to get far enough in these companies to feel like we're talking to somebody that could make a decision either on an investment, strategic partnership, or acquisition. Then June comes around of 2014. So we spent basically a whole year and a half repositioning the product and reestablishing our network contacts. In June of 2014, we're in a situation where we needed to get our next round of investment. The $5 million in 2013 was still going strong, but that was going to carry us through 2014, but not all the way through 2015. So we launch a process, and these boxes on the left were actually that was taken from the exact slide that I used when we presented to all of those companies that you saw references to on the previous slide. And we gave bullets that looked a lot like this. We told them dates of which we needed to have their interest by. We were basically approached it from the point of view of strategic partnership, but it was well understood by everybody that they could also consider acquisition. And in August, we needed term sheets. And this was also very nerve-wracking because now we're talking to much bigger companies. The smallest company we were talking to had annual revenues of $1 billion, right? So this is a lot different than the oil and gas space where we were talking to $1 to $200 million companies. And we're being just as aggressive. In fact, this timeline was, or if I were to go back and do it again, I would make this timeline less aggressive. It was a little too fast, but you learn as you go. When you do a process like this, you cannot wiggle. Because we had almost everybody came back and asked us to change the dates. The second you change the date, you just told them that either there isn't anybody else or you don't care about anybody else. You don't want anyone in the process to think that they're number one because this is a competitive process. You certainly don't want them to think that they're the only one. So when you do a process like this, you stick to whatever you told them, you are sticking to it because the second you change it, you're losing credibility. So what ended up happening? Well, we ended up getting our term sheets, and one company that we had never had any contacts with, we ended up getting acquired by Google. They contacted us. So first time I met Google was the end of June, and I'll explain that a little bit later. But they gave us an offer for $80 million cash. And I told our board of directors that the first good offer that we get, I don't care who it's from, I don't care how good the terms are, I'm going to turn it down. So we rejected that offer. And so the board of directors wasn't overly excited with that position. I had to explain myself, right? So, but here's my point of view. It's a free ask. Because I can tell them, listen, hey, really appreciate that offer, but it's just not good enough. And when I do that, they're either going to think that we have something else that can meet that, or they're going to think I'm crazy. And in the case that I'm crazy, they're probably just not going to increase their offer. But I can always come back and say my board of directors overruled me, and they absolutely would in that situation. And then when you think about the approvals that big companies have to go through to get an offer of this level, even companies like Google, for which this is probably what they spend on coffee every week, they've already got this approved. They probably didn't give you their biggest offer because they don't want to go through the approval cycle again. They need to leave some negotiation room. And if you come back and apologize, then they won. So they're going to, that offer is still there. They already did all the work, and then they beat you in the argument. That makes them a good negotiator. On the other hand, they can sweeten the deal a little bit, which is what they did. They gave us another offer for $85 million. Now, from a certain point of view, you could say, well, that's only 80 to 85. That's almost the same number, right? From my point of view, is $5 million more. That's the part I focused on. But I wasn't going to pull that same stunt twice, so we accepted that offer. So how does this connect back to the business plan competitions? Because this, to me, I didn't actually piece this together in my mind until I was preparing for this presentation. But to me, this is pretty exciting. So Vidya she's my favorite Googler, because she's the one that spearheaded our acquisition within Google. She has her own startup company now. She's left and doing her own thing, so we wish her the best. And she was tasked to look into us by Brian McClendon. Now, how did Brian learn about us? Well, Brian learned about us from Bob Peebler. Bob Peebler was a former CEO of Ion. He was the CEO that I did all my negotiations with, and he had just retired. And he was still, Ion had board advice. He still was associated with the company doing some consulting, and we had a board of advisors, a board of directors. He had visitation rights, so I would see him all the time. He provided the introduction. But if you recall, how did I know Bob? Well, I know Bob from Dan Piat, and we met Dan Piat from the business plan competitions. So that's why I say, a large part of Luminine's success, maybe we would have been successful anyway, but the debt of gratitude that we owe the business plan competition and the process that we went through is, well, you can measure it. It measures in dollars, $85 million. So I thought it was pretty exciting when I finally, like I said, it hadn't dawned on me, but when you realize that it all tied back to doing the business plan competitions, which now was 10 years ago for me, that's part of the reason why it's such an honor to get to come back here and give tonight's speech. So with that, thank you very much.
Let's give another round of applause for Brad. I know personally that was inspiring when I met Brad actually only a couple months ago, 5 months ago, through Greg. He came to an event at UCSD called Fuck Up Fridays, or F-Up Fridays, to talk about the mistakes. And so, it was interesting to hear some of the mistakes along the way, and I met with him at coffee, wanted to hear his story. We spent a couple of hours, and it was so inspirational for me, and I hope that it's inspirational for a lot of the young entrepreneurs here in the audience. So let's keep the excitement going, and let's get towards the main part. So first, I want to introduce the judges for tonight's event. The first judge for Life Tech is Greg Korowit. Greg is a serial entrepreneur, investor, author, and innovation systems architect. He is currently a partner at Chi Capital and founding partner in their innovation incubator, Chi Labs. He's a director of innovation at the University of California, San Diego, where he lectures, and is also a visiting lecturer at Stanford University. He spent 25 years working in startups, venture capital, and is one of the pioneers of the field of innovation-based economic development. He's co-author of the best-selling book, The Rainforest, The Secret to Building the Next Silicon Valley, and is a trusted advisor to such notable organizations such as the U.S. State Department, Aspen Institute, University of California, World Bank, and Inter-America Development Bank, in addition to being a senior fellow. He's a former director of the Connect program in San Diego and is a co-founder of Global Connect, which has grown to accelerator programs in over 25 countries on the world. He started, mentored, and advised, invested in, and served as board members to hundreds of companies that are today worth more than $5 billion. And I know personally, Greg has been a huge mentor for me in many ways over the years. Greg, if you could stand up, that would be great. Let's give a round of applause. So next up is Craig Schaller. He's a director of corporate development at Medtronic, a global medical device company. He focuses on strategy and investment in genetic diagnostics, as well as international expansion strategies. Prior to his role, he was a principal manager of strategy and investment at Medtronic's cardiac rhythm and heart failure division. He's held positions in marketing and business developments at Cybernetics and worked at Trauma Medic for American Medical Rescue. Let's give a round of applause for Craig. So next we have Derek Footer, who is a managing partner of Hardtech Labs, an investment fund within accompanying health accelerator based in San Diego. Prior to HTL, he was a managing partner of Origo Ventures, a seed venture capital firm investing in Latin American technology companies. Let's give Derek a round of applause. Up next, we have a special guest flying in from San Francisco. And this is Dwayne, and he serves as the Vice President and National Head of Network Technologies and Innovation for Aetna's Medicaid Enterprise. He's responsible for all providing network contracting, value-based solutions, population health technology, and innovations divisions. He's also led startups planning for Aetna's new health plans in California, Nevada, and Maryland. He served as the Chief Operating Officer for Aetna's Medicaid division, where he oversaw the day-to-day operations, network, technology, integration, and strategy departments across Aetna's 17-state Medicaid footprint. So he joined Aetna's Corporate Development Division in 2010 and ultimately served as the Vice President of New Business Development. Let's give a round of applause for Dwayne. And next we have, for LifeTech as well, last LifeTech judge, is Frank Stonebanks. He's currently a venture partner with Lumira Capital Investment Management, a healthcare venture fund, and they just recently opened its San Diego office. They have over $500 million AUM and recently had a first close on Fund 4, a $200 million fund. He's also an EIR at UCSD, and his expertise and guidance will help UCSD develop commercialization strategies, expand connectivity between the school and external innovation system. Let's give a round of applause for Frank. So then we have 3 clean tech judges. The first one is Joe Gatto. He's a founder and CEO of StarMine, a fintech company that created algorithms and software to analyze Wall Street and analysts and analyze companies and their stock. He raised several funds of VC, grew the team 200, and grew the revenues to $33 million per year and sold to Thomson Reuters for $100 million. Today, he's an angel investor and an advisor to startups. And he's working on clean tech projects in California, Hawaii, including photovoltaic, solar thermal, and battery storage. Let's give a round of applause for Joe. Next judge is Bob Hemphill. Most of his career, he was employed at AES, a global electric power generating and distribution company, where he served as the vice president and chief staff to the CEO. He's one of the 3 executives that started the company in 1981 and grew it from $1 million 6-person startup. AES owns and operates 32,000 megawatts of power in 18 countries globally and is a publicly listed company with about $39 billion in assets and $17 billion in revenues in 2016. It's a pleasure to have you, Bob. Thank you. And the last clean tech judge is David Anderson. Give me one more second, and I'm going to actually, okay, wanted to make sure. So David Anderson is the CEO of Pi Energy. He is an angel investor and a serial entrepreneur. He's managed private equity companies, and it's a pleasure to have David. Thank you. And that's it for the clean tech judges. Now we have 5 of the high tech judges. So the first one is Brad, as you all know. The second one, we have the pleasure of having Amy Chang, and she's the CEO of Delta Nutricentials, a consumer health supplement company. She's the VP of Strategy and Investment Relations for AMN Healthcare, a publicly listed company, and during which time their market cap grew from 220 million to over 1 billion. Let's give a round of applause for Amy. And next up, we have Mike Chen, who actually flew down from San Francisco today to be at our event. So Mike comes, he's a founding partner at Excapsa Group, which focuses on helping early stage companies to raise capital and grow. He brings a research analyst perspective to startups, companies that have spent years at investment banking at hedge funds, and before forming his own consulting and investment firm. Before that, he worked at companies like Sun Microsystems, Teradyne, and Dell Computer. And he's a Harvard Business School graduate. Let's give a round of applause for Mike Chen. And next we have Sean Clatu. He's the principal of Next Wave Ventures, a San Diego-based seed to early stage investment firm specializing in the commercialization of advanced technologies originating within universities and research institutes. So it's a pleasure to have him focused on university technologies. Thank you, Sean. And last, we have Jonathan Sprangler. He's an intellectual property executive turned entrepreneur. After 22 years of IP experience at a top law firm and 15 years of VP and Chief IP Counsel at Nuvasive, he's now the CEO for his own company, Ciara Guitars, as well as CEO of IP Quarterback LLC. He's an active angel investor, and he's been included in over 800 million in mergers acquisitions. So, joining him today, we have a special guest. This is Remy. She is 5 going on 16. She's soon going to be a graduate of kindergarten at Sunset View Elementary in Point Loma. She swims like a mermaid. She loves science experiments and has been sailing since before she was born. She's also a music lover and racing her car battery Mini Cooper. A fun fact, she lodged her first public performance at 2.5 years old, singing Lonely Boy by the Black Keys from a crowd of 400 with their dad's band. So she's going to be joining her father today in being a judge and voting for the high-tech track. It's a pleasure to have her, to be able to get her time. I know her schedule is very busy. It was very hard to get her here. So this year, I'm absolutely blown away with the competitors that are on all of the tracks. Not only are the ones that are presenting tonight, but the ones that have already placed. And the inner workings of the way that the event's going to work is we're going to have 7 minutes for the entrepreneurs to present and 7 minutes of questions that the judges are going to have. At the end of the event, the judges are going to deliberate. We're going to have 2 of the awards that we're going to be giving out and announcing the final winners. So, without further ado, let me do a hold slide. First up is ARC, Additive Rocket Company.
That's a hard presentation to follow up with Brad. Although I didn't sell my company for $85 million, I do have $8,500 in student debt, so that's worth something. And I certainly don't compare to Remy. She'll be way past me when she's my age. So thank you for being here tonight. My name is Andy, and I'm the founder and CEO of ARC, also known as the Additive Rocket Corporation. And at ARC, we 3D print metal rocket engines for the space industry. Our mission is to democratize space by providing reliable and affordable propulsion solutions. We create high-performance, customized thrust chambers in 1/10 the time and at half the cost of traditional methods. Over the past decade, there's been a shift towards the privatization of the space industry. You've heard of notable space entrepreneurs such as Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Richard Branson. Alongside these men, there's a new breed of space companies designing launch vehicles and satellites. But unlike Elon and Jeff, these companies don't have $1 billion to build their businesses. The largest barrier for these new space companies is the high cost of propulsion systems. That's where ARC comes in. ARC has created a proprietary design methodology to create mission-specific rocket engines. By utilizing additive manufacturing, costs can be reduced while accelerating development, enabling more frequent launches. The propulsion market is a $6.3 billion industry, and our beachhead markets consist of the small launch vehicle industry and the satellite industry. I started this company with my roommate at the end of 2015, Kyle, as juniors at UC San Diego. And as you expect, we didn't really know how to traditionally design and manufacture a rocket engine. So we decided to reinvent it. Inspired by fractal passages found in nature, we've implemented these advanced geometries in our hardware. We filed 4 provisional patents last year covering these novel designs, and we have 4 additional provisional patents drafted this year and are ready to be filed. We'll show off the engine at the end. Actually, previously, young space companies were limited to searching for propulsion systems out of a standard catalog. And the high cost of a custom engine put that option out of reach. And actually, much of the technology, frankly, remained the same since the 70s. With ARC's cradle-to-grave approach, time and cost can be reduced while still delivering a superior custom engine. And we form high-touch relationships with our customers, reducing the time needed to take a design from the drawing board to the launch pad. And as you see, when compared to traditional engine development, not only can ARC reduce the time and cost, but we could also greatly enhance engine performance and reliability. So ARC generates revenue through the design, manufacture, and test of all the engines that we create. Alternatively, our IP can be licensed to large companies both in and out of the space industry. To reach our target customers, most of which are actually in stealth mode, ARC is actively participating in trade shows and conferences. The average cost of customer acquisition for us ranges from $10,000 to $15,000, with a contract potential ranging from $100,000 to $500,000. The engine classes that we are developing are targeted to specific customer segments that we have found to be very interested in additive manufacturing technologies. And just this year, we've added a group of high-caliber individuals to our team. Greg Horwitz, well-respected serial entrepreneur and investor in our community. Tim Pickens is a rock star in the aerospace community. Formerly the chief propulsion engineer at Moon Express, Tim offers our at-cost testing at his facility in Huntsville, Alabama. And Joel Perez, a UCSD alumnus with over 10 years of industry experience working on the space shuttle main engines. Currently, we're designing 4 thrusters ranging from half a pound to 40,000 pounds of thrust for our early adopter customers. We have 15 customers in our sales pipeline, and with multiple letters of intent, we have a weighted pipeline size of $3.9 million. To date, we've raised over $200,000 out of our $500,000 seed round, which we opened last month. The funds will be utilized to build out our infrastructure and to accelerate the release of engine classes for our customers. Along with further establishing our engineering processes, ARC plans to double the size of its sales pipeline by the end of Q4. Some of our main milestones for this year include a hot fire test of our engine next month, moving into our warehouse and acquisition of a metal printer in Q3, and the release of our first engine class and signing on to at least 4 contracts by the end of the year. Also, we've made it through the final interview stages for both Y Combinator and Techstars, so we're currently making our decision on which accelerator to pursue. But we are sure that each accelerator's demo day will be a large inflection point for ARC. So, just think, in a few short years, anyone with an idea or a dream could put a satellite into orbit or farther into the frontier. And once again, our mission is to democratize space by providing reliable and affordable propulsion solutions. So, on behalf of the ARC team, I invite you to join us as we print the future of space exploration. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
With all the interest in additive manufacturing, and it seems like it's taking over in almost every industry, my question is who's on your radar in terms of other companies that are endeavoring with additive manufacturing for this same application?
Right. So first off, we have direct competitors, the largest players, Aerojet Rocketdyne and Moog Inc. They're creating propulsion systems, and they've been looking into additive manufacturing for the past 2 decades, but they've only output 2 engines from each company. So our indirect competitors are the additive manufacturing branches of the large aerospace corporations or the customers that we're trying to sell to, like SpaceX or Blue Origin. What we've seen is that these companies are embracing 3D printing, but they're taking parts that can be traditionally manufactured, and they're 3D printing that. They're only making marginal increases in the technologies. They're not going the leaps and bounds that we envisioned for this type of technology, and that's what we see. 5 to 7 years down the line, the engineers at these companies will be creating designs like this that fully capitalize on the limitless possibilities of 3D printing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Andy, Sean with Next Wave Ventures. Can you explain some of the regulations or regulatory type of process or testing that you guys have to go through? You mentioned that you're going to do handle some of the manufacturing. What sort of testing do you guys have to, and validation do you have to have before you can go sell this to somebody?
Right, so for us, the first set of certifications we need are either AS or ISO certification, that's just standard engineering certification. Then we work with NASA engineers to get FAA certifications for our engines. Aside from that, we have certain processes in-house that we want to develop or have been developing in order to qualify prints that are coming out of the printer. Because this technology is so new, every entity is creating their own standardized way to ensure the quality of each part. For example, SpaceX prints a test coupon next to each part and does tensile compression testing with that. So we're doing tests like that. We're modeling our tests after NASA, SpaceX. Joe Perez brings a lot of experience. We'll be testing our engines to 3 times the operating lifespan. So there's a whole series of requirements that our engines need to be put through before we start offering them on customers and their vehicles.
Okay, so follow-up question is, what's the timeline and cost that's associated with some of those?
So with the $500,000, we plan to actually flush out a majority of our standard operating procedures, which include the quality control and tests, because most of the majority of the money will go towards the formation of our first 2 engine classes. With the first engine class, we'll be vetting out all of our processes and actually going through each process to bring an engine from the drawing board to the test stand onto a customer's vehicle. So once that's established, the next engine class will be twice as fast, will be much easier than the first one. So like I said, the $500,000 will be used to raise the technology readiness level of our first engine for the first 6 months. And then after that, we plan to bring on additional seed funding to build out additional engine classes. So to answer your question, 6 to 8 months.
Okay.
Yes.
Hey, Andy, every time I see you present, it feels like your technology just gets more and more advanced, so congratulations.
It's my team's job, so.
Yeah. Quick question for you. So how is your technology, like you called it a proprietary design methodology?
Yes.
And I'd love to know just a little bit more about that because, and how it's scalable. Right. Because otherwise, in some ways, you become just an engineering design consulting firm, right? But I think you're more than that, and hopefully it's more scalable than that.
Right. So this figure that's in our engine, this took us over 1,000 hours to CAD just to make on the computer, let alone the countless hours for simulation, optimization. So this took us 6 to 8 months with a team of 7 engineers. Not really ideal for scaling, for making customized engines for any customer that comes to our door. What we've created is a series of algorithms and machine learning scripts that actually take in boundary conditions and mission parameters from our customers, and then it helps our engineers automatically design a series of shapes like these. And then it automatically feeds it into a simulation software, and that spits out data. We analyze it, and then the computer generates 100 or 1,000 more models with similar variations. So this is a sort of a generative design using multi-physics. So that helps us, in short, shorten down the design time of this to under a week with only 2 engineers. So that's the proprietary part.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Thank you. Remy, how you doing?
What keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night? That's a really good question. Besides the train that goes by my apartment, the job of a CEO is to make sure that his team has all of the resources that he could give them so that they could produce value and actually build a great company. What keeps me up at night is that I have a whole team, 7 core engineers and a lot of advisors and mentors that are depending on me to do my job so that they could do their job. So I see myself as the person, almost a gatekeeper. If I fail, then I failed my team, and that's the one thing that I'm afraid of, and then that really keeps me up at night because it's a roller coaster ride. A startup is a roller coaster ride, but if you have the persistence and willpower and the right team, that'll get you through everything. But I would say it keeps me up for 30 extra minutes. I don't get a lot of sleep, so I'm out like that. But when I do have a lot of sleep, sometimes I think about that. Good question.
So one question over here.
Yeah.
Have you identified any follow-on markets that could benefit from your solution?
Yes. So for a geometry like this that optimizes fluid flow and heat flow and minimizes weight, those are pretty much your 3 crucial parameters in almost any high-performing system. So when we went to different trade shows and conferences, we actually had people with connections from different companies, different industries, automobile, mining, agriculture, come up to us asking us if we could implement this and help some of their high-performing systems become optimized. So yes, there is an application to almost any high-performing system that you could think of, and our start is in the space industry. But there are countless industries around the world that uses any type of machinery can benefit from this technology.
All right, and with that, 7 minutes of questions are up.
Thank you very much.
Yep. And up next, we have the second competitor for the high-tech track, weights.
Hi everyone, I'm Nick Halverson.
I'm Linus Grasso. I'm Max Topolsky, and we're the founders of Weights, a live waiting time and shared data monetization company. What does that mean?
It means that we, like everyone else, hate waiting in line.
Who here hasn't had a trip to a restaurant, gym, or shopping center ruined because the line was so long and it was too busy? At 18 years old, I moved to San Diego from a small town in Florida with a population of 2,000 to attend UCSD, and needless to say, the big city life was a lot to get used to. One of the biggest shocks is that everyone seemed to accept wasting time in lines.
We decided that just because people are used to waiting in line doesn't mean they have to unknowingly accept it as a part of life.
Technology today is amazing. We can see up-to-the-minute traffic conditions, know exactly where our friends and loved ones are, and even broadcast live videos to thousands of friends. So why can no one tell me how many people are in line at Chipotle?
Weights will become the leader in delivering accurate waiting times and busyness levels for popular locations across the globe. Our ultimate mission is to deliver the benefits of big data for all. This will be able with our Weights Eagle. This low-cost device is able to count the number of smartphones nearby via Bluetooth signals. That allows us to establish a relationship between those signals and the busyness of each establishment and report the information back to users in real time.
We are all too familiar with the pain and hassle of pulling up to a location and there being a line out the door. Through our free mobile app, Waits will empower users with live waiting times, allowing us all to make the most of our day.
Businesses that install the Waits Eagle will be able to improve their customers' experience. There are multiple studies linking customer satisfaction with wait times, actual and perceived. Being busy is great, but it's crushing for a business owner that over half their potential customers will leave just because you're doing well. By reporting live waiting times, as well as suggesting a better time to go, we can flatten a business's customer flow, increasing their operating efficiency. Detailed location analytics and consumer-oriented data will provide actionable information for businesses to improve their offering. Most importantly, we can guarantee a high marketing ROI because of the data our Eagles collect, which can confirm when we drive a user to a store.
Our Eagle passively collects data from where a user goes in order to analytically determine the best way to connect an establishment to its customer with the right message at the right time. This is an example from our Waits Smart profile. The more data we collect, the smarter it becomes, and the more powerful our marketing engine will be.
Whether you like it or not, your behavior is being collected, analyzed, and sold to the highest bidder in the form of data. This market is already huge, and by 2020, it's projected to be over $200 billion, every single dollar of which is enabled by the data source, you. In what other industry does a supplier of a product not profit?
Well, maybe college football.
NCAA notwithstanding, the only answer is big data. These companies are all profiting off the sale of your data, except for you, the data source.
We believe that users should be rewarded when their data powers a transaction. We developed the Waits credit system so that users can get paid when we profit off their data by simply using our app on a daily basis. This encourages users to use our app and to go to businesses that install the Waits Eagle.
Now is the perfect time to implement Waits technology. The number of Bluetooth signals are increasing every day, thanks to Apple removing their headphone jack and the increasing prevalence of IoT smart devices. Advances in AI and machine learning make useful data analytics available to businesses of all sizes. Most importantly, our Uberization of data model perfectly encapsulates public sentiment in America. Most users are hesitant to give their data, but a Microsoft study found that 99% of people would do so for cash rewards and 89% for discounts. Our Waits credit system is designed to do both.
Waits will roll out starting at UCSD by targeting popular places such as the food court, the gym, and the library. Once we acquire a wider user base, we will then expand to high-performing regional chains. Our market research shows us that our target audience are people between 18 and 34 years old. Out of those, 67% are inclined to download an app that helps reduce waiting times.
B2B hardware like Linkit provides granular location data, but with little user information, while network systems like Foursquare have data on a wide range of users, but don't have a holistic view of a specific location. By sharing our successes with users and offering the everyday value of wait times, we can grow a user base that no hardware company can compete with while offering more detail than a network system.
Competitors in delivering waiting times simply do not source their information through advanced hardware technology and therefore can't compete with real-time data delivery.
Our financial projections are based off us scaling from San Diego to 15 of the most densely populated cities in the United States by 2022. Businesses will pay a small subscription fee for our services, and Waits will only make marketing revenue when we confirm that we drove a customer into your location, thus minimizing the risk for businesses. I'm extremely confident that the three dedicated co-founders up here today are suited with the knowledge and skills to design, build, market, and sell our solution to both businesses and consumers. By partnering with an established Taiwanese company, Anjin, we are able to immediately start implementing a proven low-cost hardware device across UCSD for a proof of concept. By this summer, we'll have our software application completed and ready for download, and any additional funding we receive will be used for hardware orders, software development, and online server use. So,
what are you waiting for?
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Question for you. So in terms of the wait time I mean, everybody hates waiting. I get that. But I guess what I'm curious about is when you think of the places or the entities that are doing wait time assessments. I mean, I for one am a big fan of the wait time estimators at Disney, for example, right? But not to be glib, but what prevents someone from basically pivoting, or not Disney, but what gives you guys the competitive advantage? Is it first mover? Is it IP? Tell me why someone won't be a fast follower and maybe learn from your mistakes and leapfrog.
Okay.
Well, it's a combination of both. So the restaurant, there are a lot of beacons that already do this for airports, stadiums, Disneyland. That's a great one. They have, I believe that's Lee Integra who does Disneyland. One, by being a first mover into restaurants, specifically the fast casual industry, as well as having into gyms. Having a consolidated app where people can see this rather than your Disneyland app, your airport, your stadium. You need that specific app to do that. And by being a first mover, we can gain traction among a user base, solidifying our positioning.
Okay, do you have IP? Anything pending, or what's the plan there?
We have a provisional patent filed on the Eagle.
Okay, thank you.
Question over here. Good presentation, guys. Can you describe the difference of your hardware from the existing beacons that you just mentioned, things like iBeacon?
Yeah, so typical hardware, I think we have a slide somewhere in here. We have a pretty big appendix for the questions, but typical beacon companies that have failed to reach their projected heights, their beacons are essentially just a tiny device that broadcasts a Bluetooth signal for any device that just hits it, kind of like a lighthouse. It doesn't take in any information. So our hardware has a lot of processing power, storage, and also receiving antennas so that it can gather information rather than just project it out.
Okay, and one other question. So of course, like everybody, I like the idea of not waiting as long, but as far as the businesses that you're selling to, won't some of them be concerned that you're actually driving people away from visiting their business?
No, so one of the things that we're trying to do, one, along with customer satisfaction, so actually we'll lead with this part. So a big part of waiting is that an expected wait, sorry, big appendix. So this is psychological studies on waiting. So perceived waiting is actually a bigger impact than actual wait times. And I bolded 4 and 5 because it says uncertain waits seem longer than a certain wait, unexplained waits seem longer than an explained wait. So just like with Disneyland, how they'll actually lessen the wait estimation, we would we'd be able to do a similar process and tell the user what you're expecting. Also, if it's a valuable service that people want, people will still be willing to wait there. Why businesses want it as a marketing engine is because we believe in a skin in the game approach where we only take money when we actually drive a user to your location. So if that was by wait times, if I told you 6:30 is the best time to go and you go between 6:15 and 6:45, we would take 5 cents for that. Also, we would give 40% of that back to our users because we believe that you own the right to profit off your data. Our other model is more on our recommendation engine and deals for you and gamification of the data that we have. So we would tell you, if you wanted to look for a Thai place and you picked out of one of the 10 that our system pops up, and you went there within an hour, 2 hours, X amount of time, again, we drove the user there, and the business would be able to only pay us then.
I'm technically life sciences, but I do have a question. So in order for you to build your algorithms and models and understand exactly how many people in different restaurants, and I assume different restaurants is going to depend on the restaurant itself, so Chipotle might be different than, say, Pizza Joint or whatever. You need to have X number of devices out there in the world, and you need to get those devices out in the world, which is, building devices isn't cheap, and then making the deals isn't cheap. So what number of devices and agreements and restaurants or whatever happen to be the metric do you need in order to build the algorithm well enough that the service is really useful for someone like me?
So by installing 2 to 3 Eagles in each location, it can almost be just solely specific to that location because these 2 different Eagles installed in a location can see the same Bluetooth phone signal traveling, and it can calculate a flow rate in how fast that each signal is moving in line and determine the wait time by that. But we would be targeting the top 1,000 most popular locations in every city that we target, roughly.
So you need 2,000 of those devices out there to get to a point where your data really is And what percentage of the data in any given restaurant is valuable across the entire spectrum, and what percentage is specific to a particular location or restaurant?
So it's actually more to a specific location. There's actually an entire mathematical study based on line times. It's called queuing theory. And one of the biggest aspects is flow rate. So how long you get in, how long you get your food, how long you get out. Once we establish a flow rate for each restaurant, each place, we would only need information on that single space. Additional information from other restaurants or other businesses, other locations would be helpful to tailor our algorithm, tailor our software, but we could do it just on that one location. One of the things we're planning on doing is when we install an Eagle, we're going to let it run for a month before that location is live. So we can actually get a baseline of what is accurate and what isn't accurate. We can have an accurate estimation.
Thanks.
This is Sean with Next Wave Ventures. Nice job, guys, first off. Second, my question is on, can you go back to your financial projections slide just real quick?
Yes.
Just have some questions. Yeah, so can you just walk us through your cost, and then also, too, where's the revenue coming from? Are the restaurants paying for these devices? What's the installation cost that you guys are looking at?
So our costs are actually all laid up here. So for costs for beacon deployment and maintenance, we estimate about 2.25 beacons per location. Some are only going to take 1, some are going to take 2, some 3, some 4. 2.25 is the estimation we did. Cost per installation is going to be $25. Right now, a single one of those devices costs us $25. If we were to order them in a mass order, it would be able to be less. Maintenance is about $250 a quarter. We just amortize that over the year. We're predicting about $10 of maintenance a quarter since it doesn't need to be replaced. As far as costs go, our actual revenue. So revenue, we charge 5 cents per attribution tier number 1, $1.50 per attribution tier number 2. We're assuming that 25% of our users use attribution tier number 1 once. So that's saying 25% of our users will look at a wait time and go within a specified amount of time just once a week, which is not a very high number considering they're going to be getting money back, and wait times are an everyday thing. Attribution number 2, which they would get more money for, you use the recommendation engine, you use one of these systems, we're actually only predicting 5% of our total user base does that once a week. And again, this is something that you're going to get money back for. That's a big thing we believe, that when we profit, we're profiting off your data, so you should be profiting as well. Any other questions on financial? We can also do like population growth. We have our assumptions laid out.
Thank you. With that, we're out of time for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And next up, we have South 8 Technologies. Yep.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jung-Woo Lee, representing South 8 Technologies, and we are focused on creating next-generation energy storage devices. So let's take a minute to think about my best friend, my smartphone here. Now, the smartphone has completely revolutionized our lives and is the perfect example of what is possible when we have mobile power. And the key component that enabled this technology is the lithium-ion battery. Now, looking forward, energy storage and batteries will be crucial for enabling many clean technologies as we transition away from fossil fuels, especially for the $6 billion hybrid electric vehicle market. Now, batteries all around us and represent a $60 billion global market. This market is rapidly expanding and predicted to reach $250 billion by 2040. And a large part of this growth will be due to an upcoming boom in electric vehicle sales, which is predicted to outsell gas vehicles by 2040. But all of this is predicated on the development of better and better batteries, because there's still some key issues with this thing today. To begin with, we know that batteries are dangerous, considering the toxic and flammable chemicals used, exemplified by the most recent Samsung Galaxy incidents. And batteries have limited energy density, considering I can't go a full day without having to recharge my phone. And customers commonly cite battery range anxiety as a key reason why they are reluctant to purchase an electric vehicle. Less well known is the issue that batteries fail at low temperature. This means that while your Tesla works well year-round here in Southern California, during the cold winter months in Boston, Chicago, Minneapolis, there's up to a 40 to 50% drop in mileage range. And at even colder temperatures, batteries fail altogether. This means that there are many large markets out there with an unmet need for a battery that can function at these extremely low temperatures. And these issues are inherent to the battery chemistry itself. So a simple widget or add-on won't suffice. A breakthrough technology is needed. So, I think we can sort of all agree. The issue with current batteries is that they suck. You know it, I know it, and Elon's thrown a bunch of money at it, and he's still struggling with it. So with this battle cry and the huge market potential, there have been countless battery startups in the past decade that have had supposed breakthroughs, but many have just plain failed. Looking at this graveyard, we can honestly say that past startups fail often far before they reach full production due to inability to scale from material incompatibility and expensive manufacturing techniques. So the key question we have to ask ourselves is not only can we build a better battery, but can we develop a production-compatible breakthrough battery technology? Southache Technologies is commercializing a novel lithium-ion battery electrolyte chemistry that has demonstrated world record low temperature operation down to -60°C, increased energy density by 65% with the potential to double in the future, and greatly mitigates the likelihood of thermal runaway, which is what causes the battery to overheat and catch on fire. And these results have been third-party validated by the National Renewable Energy Lab. Maybe, probably more importantly, unlike other emerging chemistries out there, our electrolyte is completely compatible with all the materials used in batteries today and scalable manufacturing techniques. This means that we can tap into the already existing supply chain, since we're only replacing one part, rapidly develop and integrate into large-scale manufacturing facilities. So Southache Technology was founded by Dr. Cyrus Rasomji, the inventor of the Southache technology. He has over 9 years of experience in the energy storage research and manufacturing field at Eaton, Z-Power, and Space Micro. I am currently a PhD student here at UCSD, but in my previous life, I was a manufacturing R&D project manager at Panasonic and MIT. In addition, we have 3 MBAs working with us on customer discovery, and additional 2 engineering PhDs helping with product development. Our scientific advisor is Professor Shirley Meng, a leading expert in the energy storage field, and our business advisor is Tim Ruth, entrepreneur who focuses on tech commercialization. So this technology was developed here at UCSD, and we have 4 patents filed. Southache is negotiating an exclusive licensing agreement, and all future patents will be owned by Southache to bolster our IP portfolio. So far to date, we have raised won $57,000 from business competitions such like this, and we've had amazing connections with local entrepreneurs who are happy to help. Great, thank you. To bolster our R&D developments, out of thousands of applications, Southache has been awarded 2 phase 1 SBIR grants totaling $350,000 from NASA and NSF, which will go towards developing low temperature batteries for space exploration and high atmosphere drones. In the next year, we anticipate raising another $4 million in non-dilutable funds from government and private entities. So in terms of competition, the big 3 that cannot be ignored are Panasonic, LG, and Samsung. But these 3 companies have very similar chemistries, as they have solely focused on creating a cheap, high-energy, rechargeable battery. There's still room for differentiation in terms of low temperature performance and safety, and there are other small companies out there attempting to work in this space. But Southache has a completely novel chemistry capable of creating a battery that has higher energy density, works at lower temperature, and is safer. In terms of the transportation battery value chain, you have companies that are component producers, cell producers, pack assemblers, product integrators, and then finally the end user. Our core competency is this electrolyte chemistry, so that puts us in the cell production category. Now, our customer interactions stress that a key barrier to entry for new chemistries is integration to this value chain. So we have designed our battery to be a drop-in replacement for what they're currently using out there. So but to get there, we need to first develop our manufacturing techniques out. So our initial business model, we will buy off-the-shelf components from the component sourcers, assemble our own batteries using our patented materials, and then sell to pack assemblers and product integrators out there. But as we scale, we will transition to third-party manufacturing. So while we have had overwhelmingly positive interactions with electric vehicle customers out there, we realize that car manufacturers have very long product development cycles and rigorous performance and safety standards. We'll need to first develop longer-term data analytics, thorough safety regulation testing, and establish a reputation of trust. So our beachhead demonstration market will be in high atmosphere, which consists of things like drones and weather balloons. We chose this market specifically because we have the government funding to support our development in space, and we have letters of support from customers who are anxious for prototypes right now and willing to pay a premium. Our beachhead market into the automotive space will be in start-stop, where our low temperature performance will significantly reduce the size and weight of the engine battery. And then, after all that, we can enter the electric vehicle market. Right now, we're developing prototypes to begin to get customer feedback and conduct the longer-term cycling and safety tests. We will invest in limited manufacturing capabilities to generate revenue from those niche, small extreme low temperature contracts, things of that sort, and begin the large-scale testing necessary to enter the automotive market. Now, we know we cannot, nor do we ever want to compete with those established giants in terms of manufacturing scale. So our goal is to develop the IP to enable integration of our process into their manufacturing lines, either through a licensing or joint venture or third-party agreement. So we're currently raising $500,000 in funds to finish prototype development and begin to build customer samples. This will give us the runway to validate product market fit, begin safety testing, customer discovery, marketing, things of that sort, in order to reach our goals of our first order. So awesome, let's drive forward. We are South Day Technologies, creating next generation energy storage for next generation transportation. Thank you. And Cyrus will be joining me for Q&A. And he's the genius behind all this.
Oh, no.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
Good job. I realize you're focusing on the automotive market. I saw a picture of a Tesla. How about the conventional market, automotive? I have family in Scandinavia, and if it gets really cold, that
You
car's
mean
not moving.
the lead acid battery that's in?
Yeah, like, have you considered like having either, have you spoken to any conventional automotive battery manufacturers that supply those areas so that you could have like a hybrid battery with two mixed?
Actually, we've had intense conversations about that, and that's definitely one of the beachhead automotive markets we want to get into, which would, people might refer to it as micro-hybrid or start-stop engines.
Yeah.
It's exactly that. Your lead-acid battery just doesn't cut it in cold weather very well, but it's still better than lithium-ion. What we've actually developed is something with the energy density of lithium-ion with the low temperature performance. Perfect for these start-stop applications. It saves up to 10% of your fuel in your conventional automotives, and the federal regulations mandate those to be implemented now, basically, and going into the 2020s, basically, manufacturers have to implement that into some of their cars. So it's definitely a technology that we're working on. But we understand that it'll take a while to implement in the automotive market, which is why we have these low-temperature aerospace beachhead markets.
Thank you. I was seeing the graph in your materials, and it has double density compared to traditional lithium-ion, and also the cold temperature. You seem to be focusing only on the cold temperature. Why is that versus the double energy density?
So no, definitely the low temperature aspect makes for a cool demo, which is out in the hallway, by the way. The chemistry just loves this low temperature thing, works really well, and that's why we have these beachhead markets in those areas. The energy density, it'll take more testing. We've already demonstrated it, but we do need more testing, additional cycles, things of that nature to really flesh it out. So we've demonstrated up to about 65% increase in energy density. We want to improve that further to like 200% energy density increase. I'm sorry, 100%.
And just in terms of positioning, there are other startups out there that make similar energy density claims, such as certain solid state materials, whereas no other company out there can match us in the low temperature performance.
I see. And as far as thermal runaway advantages, as far as safety, how's the competitive landscape?
So there are two main aspects, three, I guess, main competitors to that. One, you have the separator material, which shuts down inside the battery. It's non-reversible. As soon as that separator shuts down, battery goes in the trash. Second one is in the cap. They have a little device that it's pretty much a fuse. As soon as you light that fuse open, battery's dead again. The third one's just thermal management. Like the Tesla, any of your electric vehicles have some thermal management system. Adds weight, adds cost, engineers, big headache. Our electrolyte has this very novel mechanism where you can actually shut down the battery reversibly at a tuned temperature. So if you're, yeah, exactly right here. So as soon as you increase in your temperature, that blue line, the energy density just drops down, meaning the battery just shuts down before it reaches that red line right there. Now when the battery shuts down, there's no overheating. It just naturally cools back down. And then once it cools back down, the energy density is back up. You can reactivate that cell. So it's really a novel thing built into the chemistry that improves the safety aspect, whereas other people have to engineer it in there with additional cost and weight.
So as far as the competitive landscape, because that's a huge market. Not everybody lives in the Arctic, though I've been there many times in winter, and minus 40 happens a lot. But as far as a broader market, because people hate when their computer blows up or their phone.
Absolutely. This would definitely mitigate that. Yeah.
So do you have a unique advantage in that higher energy density at the higher temperature?
Our technology goes up to about the same temperature, about plus 50, 60 degrees Celsius. But the problem with conventional technology is that thermal runaway reaction, which she mentioned in the Samsung phones. So we pretty much shut off that thermal runaway mechanism at those higher temperatures. We can still operate.
So it's built-in safety. So my question again, just to be, sorry for not being clear.
Please.
Do you have an advantage? Is there anybody else that has a similar built-in governor?
Not that's reversible like ours is.
Right.
Yeah.
No one else's chemistry can do this. They usually add in some sort of mechanical feature. So yes, that we do have a significant advantage in this aspect, and this is the aspect that most excites terrestrial applications. I'd argue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your electrolyte is liquefied gas, is that correct?
Yes.
So, is there anyone else working on that type of electrolyte?
No, we're in the fortunate enough position to be the very first. Oh, you putting the slide up? I love this slide. She hates it. So lithium battery research is a huge thing right now. Everyone's doing it because of these electric vehicles are really being developed strong. So right now, everyone's using conventional electrolytes. Samsung, Panasonic, LG Chem, all of them are using pretty much more or less the same electrolyte. Now, the competitive landscape in terms of the electrolyte itself, there are three main players. Over at the Army Research Labs in Washington, D.C., there's Kong Shu, who's my personal hero. He's a genius. I love him. Developing a very safe, low-cost electrolyte, but it's low in energy density. Over at PNNL, we have other guys that are working on a different type of chemistry, very high cost, but it meets that high energy density requirement. Now, Southgate Technologies, we're kind of just throwing our hat in there because this is a really novel thing. Nobody's working on liquefied gas electrolytes. We are literally the first in this area. And we kind of meet the need for the energy density, low temp, low cost, things of that nature.
So my follow-up is once you prove that concept and you shine a light on, you say you figured it out, you've got some IP, some patents pending. How difficult would it be for a Tesla or Panasonic or whomever to say, oh, let's shine a spotlight in that direction. Yeah, they got a patent, but liquefied gas, we can do that a different way. How hard will it be to work around it?
We expect a lot of people to develop patents in this same area, but we have that top umbrella kind of patent. There's only so many gas molecules that will actually work with this type of chemistry. We already have 3 patents on the chemistry that cover a bunch of these different molecules. So we feel pretty good in that position.
And Cyrus has run simulation on pretty much every gas out there. And he handpicked the only ones that should work.
That's true.
A quick follow-up on the IP. So it was my understanding that certain industries have created these patent pooling agreements, right? Where, and I thought that Elon Musk was a proponent of the pooling. So does that help or hurt to have your IP potentially be accessed by others if you want to participate in that pool?
Hopefully somebody acquires us or licenses it from us first. Yeah.
All right, well, with that, we're done with questions.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
And our next company is Shared Energy Resources.
Good evening. How many of you have installed solar rooftop at their homes? We all enjoy sunny San Diego, right? The hidden fact, this large capital investment is useless during power outages. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Abdullah Habib. I'm a PhD student at UCSD, and here's my colleague, Kunal Mata. We're here to present our company, Shared Energy Resources, where we aim to revolutionize the power system reliability. We are as well Uber for transportation and Airbnb for hotels. Every year, millions of people are affected by power outages. Based on the Department of Energy statistics, 7 million people experienced power interruption in 2016. You probably don't give your electricity much thought until the power goes out. But power outages cost electric customers real money. Power outages last between 5 to 10 minutes, cost $8 billion each year. Prevention and minimization of power interruption is one of the main focus areas for utilities because it directly relates to customer satisfaction and avoidance of claims. Outages occur for many different reasons, such as natural disasters, equipment failures, human errors, or more recently, cyber attacks. An eye-opening event for the power sector was Hurricane Sandy, which caused 8 million people to be disconnected up to a period for 2 whole weeks. Subsequently, the Department of Energy joined efforts with power experts to solve this critical problem. One might argue that outages are actually decreasing as technology improves, but this simulation shows the opposite, where the size of the circle represents the severeness of the outage. Before I present the solution, allow me to briefly describe how the power system works. Beginning from the generation side, the transmission and distribution network delivers power to your neighborhood. Any interruption in the generation or the distribution causes a blackout. That means all load and distributed energy resources has to be disconnected. Distributed energy resources such as solar rooftops, electric storage, electric vehicle, and so on for safety constraints. This paradigm frustrates many premise owners who invested heavily in their distributed energy resources. Our solution combines both available assets from both customers and utilities to optimally serve load by implementing the power of sharing. We enable a subnetwork to operate even during a large-scale outage. That means each participating customer can be donor or receiver of power based on the need or objective. This illustration shows 2 houses sharing power and 2 houses receiving power, and we can change that during the day. Think about a situation where an urgent care unit or someone on life support equipment. Why, when a safe, cost-effective solution is clearly possible, should we not have access to this available power? With shares technology, we expect up to 35% improvement in power system reliability.
So we can all agree that outage is a huge problem and very costly. And as you can see, utilities invest heavily to improve reliability. And consumers who've invested in their DER generation cannot use their generation in case of outages. And there is no simple cost-effective solution. Until now, we have developed a hardware-based software solution to provide the utilities an improvement of up to 35%, which directly translates to cost savings by minimizing the claims and sustaining the operations. Be it a short or a sustained outage, the financial impact is significant for small consumers and even larger for large businesses. And utilities have to pay for these outages, repairs, damage claims, and contending with the regulators. As an example, a consumer was reported to claim $400 for a 2-day outage in an outage during 2006 in Southern California. 1.1 customers faced that outage, which can easily be $400 million of cost for a single utility for a mere 2-day outage. We at Shares have innovated the technology which can reduce these outages and improve the system reliability at an affordable cost. Our solution is quite simple, and so is our business model. The total available market is $80 billion annually. We target to save 20 to 30% of these losses, and the utilities will pay us 20% of their savings, which is a $3 to $6 billion market every year. Our competitive advantages are quite clear. Low implementation costs, deferring and reducing investments for the utilities, and the best, which is maximizing the DER utilization and sharing it among a local subnetwork, which would otherwise be without power during a broad outage. We are not a microgrid provider, but rather a utility contingency solution which reduces or rather eliminates the impact of outages. And why are we the best to take this forward? Our technology and application is comprehensively patent protected, and our advisory board consists of pioneers from the utility and the clean tech space. We are leveraging our industry relations to build on investments and collaborations. With compelling data sets and simulations, we are currently in the prototyping stage, and we have socialized our solution with the California utilities, and they have voiced great interest in collaborations. We aim to conduct investor recruitment in mid-2018, and with further inputs, we would either expand over several stages with exit options and ultimately decide whether scaling or licensing is the best course for the business. Currently, our main focus is to complete the hardware in the loop and software in the loop simulations, and we have set an aggressive but achievable timeline for it. Our minimum viable product, or in this case, a solution, an integrated solution, will be ready by mid-2018. And with this, I'd like to thank you all for your time, and hope we have given a value proposition for a huge market potential. Thank you.
I'm a little fuzzy on how it works. Maybe you can go back to that slide with the 4 houses on it and walk us through those boxes in the front lawn. Are those battery storage?
Yeah.
And if it is, then you're saying you're not a microgrid, and how is that different?
So the definition of a microgrid, you have to serve all your load during an outage. In this case, these small boxes are the inverters. We're getting a DC from the PV, and it inverts to AC. So in this case, these 2 houses are sharing their power, and they're off to these 2 houses. So you have an example of a battery here, solar, and electric vehicles.
And we can change this over the course of the day based on the requirement of each consumer.
So to be clear, this is the topology of your solution. You have inverters and microelectronics that allow a local renewable energy generator to provide power to some neighbors, let's
Correct.
say.
Yes, we pool the power generation from the community and provide load and supply to the load that is in the community individually.
So maybe I'm not informed, but I thought this was not compliant with regulations, because if you're going to be supplying power to somebody else, you have to be a utility. Utilities have monopolies. So how do you address the regulatory issues?
That's correct. This is following IEEE 1547 interconnection protocol, and this is being revised. And at any time, this will be allowed, this will be available, and we'll be the first one to take it.
Okay, and I'm talking clearly of California. Most of the U.S., this is not.
It's mostly in the U.S. Outside, internationally, it's still available for us.
Well, yeah, that's not. I think in every country you have different regulatory issues, and they're evolving very quickly. But as far as there's no energy storage, it's an inverter with microelectronics. Is that so? What's
Well, we're not adding any new component there. It's all communication with the existing inverters, telling shut the house off and keep your power flow to the grid.
And that is the uniqueness of the solution, because it's very low capital. We are utilizing the existing resources and maybe just adding a controller. That's all. So it's very low capital.
Okay, so in most cases, what I've seen as far as residential users in California is if the local utility goes out, your solar panels go out too. So
That's
how do you
correct.
fix that?
So we'll basically overcome the control on the inverter and say, even if the power is out, we look at the available load and available generation, and we determine what is the optimal load to meet at this time step. We pull the generation from the whole community.
Okay. Could you describe, sorry, I'm monopoly. Could you describe your patent portfolio? Because seems to be a lot of prior art.
So the patent says isolate this area, and by controlling the switches, controlling which house to be disconnected, which house to be powered or not powered, based on a certain objective function.
I guess my question is, have you done a freedom to operate and a patent search?
Yeah, we have a provisional patent submitted to UCSD.
Okay, so nobody like Siemens or GE has stepped in?
They have something called outage management system, where they reroute the distribution system to overcome a failure.
And then how do you deal with the billing here? Like, there's my grandma with her life support system. She needs power.
So there will be an incentive for this house.
So how do you invoice here?
Yeah, there will be an incentive for this house to donate the power to the community.
Okay, it's a donation, so they get fresh eggs. The next
Or
day.
it could be based on bidding.
But how do you guys make business? How do you make money?
So how we make money? We basically help the utility to improve their power outages, and every time we do that, we get a portion of it, 20% of it.
Understood.
If I can ask, have you gone to any utility, or has any utility said, this is great, if you build this, we will pay you?
So we have spoken to a utility in Southern California. I'm not allowed to disclose, but and they have, have appreciated the solution greatly. And since we are currently in the hardware prototype stage, they would like to talk to us once we are past that stage.
So are you targeting developed countries as far as the target, U.S.?
Yes, we're targeting utilities.
It seems to me that OECD countries that have pretty robust grid would be a suboptimal market. Developing, underdeveloped countries that either have very little as far as grid or outages are very frequent would be a much better market. Have you thought about that?
So even California, which is one of the highest in terms of reliability, had $8 billion in losses just last year due to grid outages.
I don't think California is the most reliable. We have a highly unstable grid because of the renewables integration.
That's a good market then.
Okay, so good job.
Thank you.
The reason that utilities don't want you to generate during an outage is because you will backfeed power into the grid and make the grid unsafe.
That's correct.
So why are they going to let you do this?
So that's why we isolate the subnetwork. We isolate one street, for example, and share the power within this one street.
Yeah, but the utility won't trust you to isolate it because they're the ones.
That's why we're trying to sell it to utility, and they decide which portion of the grid there is safe to be isolated.
Well, maybe.
It sounds like you need to run one of those bidding processes with like a bunch of utilities and tell them, hey, we're going to sell to one of you. Do a Dutch auction.
Habib, I have a problem with the target market because you're saying it's 80 billion in losses, right? And if they implement the software, that's not necessarily going to help them save the losses, right? Because they still won't be able to generate the electricity for most of them, right? So that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to save the 80 billion or the 28 billion, whatever percentage of the market. So it really has to be what software is being sold to utilities, and in particular, management software for managing. So that's really your target market. It's not the 80 billion in savings, because you're actually not going to save them the 80 billion. So I guess one question is, how big is the actual target market? Because it's not really the 80 or 28 billion that you've named. And then secondly, if you don't have solar, or if you don't have an electric car, right, is this solution for the subnet actually relevant? Because without those, who else is generating the power that's actually relevant? And then in that question then, of the 100 million households, what's the solar penetration? Because that's really your relevant target market. Does that make sense?
Yes. Well, to comment on that, this is the future of power system. Everyone will have solar power and storage and EV. And when that's be applicable, we'll be the first in the market. That's coming very, very fast.
Got it. Okay.
All right. With that, we're going to end the questions. Thank you. So that concludes our clean tech track, and up next we have our last track, life technologies. And the first company to present is Veocore.
So this is Walt. Walt is 55 years old. He just recently had a grandson. And this is his heart, right after a heart attack. And this is the picture the movie that the cardiologists are looking at right after he came into the hospital. And they already fixed the heart attack, so he's fine. Nowadays, 95% of people who go into hospital for heart attack survive. And now they have to decide whether or not these patients should be given a dangerous blood thinner drug. So how does a blood thinner come in after a heart attack? So the heart attack really damages the heart muscle, right? And once the heart muscle once the contraction is impaired, the blood flow is also affected. And once the blood flow inside the ventricle is affected, there's a higher risk of blood clotting formation inside the ventricle. Once a blood clot is formed, a little piece could detach and could eventually travel to your brain, causing, for example, a stroke. And stroke is the fourth leading cause of death in the United States, but it's even the first cause of disability in the United States. And for this reason, cardiologists think about giving anticoagulation drugs, blood thinners. But these drugs have really bad side effects. And most of the time, for some patients, cardiologists are not happy giving these drugs. So, for example, patient after a heart attack or patient with heart failure, when the ventricle is weaker than it should be, are at higher risk, are known to be at higher risk of blood clotting. But there's really no method for the cardiologist to, on a patient-specific basis, assess the risk of blood clotting. And so they don't really know if this patient would benefit from receiving the drug, they could save their lives. And the current tests are really inadequate. What cardiologists do is they look at these images I showed you before, the ultrasound, and then they will look at the wall motion, right? So here is Walt's heart again, compared to another patient. And then here, cardiologists try to infer what the blood is doing, how the blood moves, by just looking at the wall motion. And that's what is missing, the blood flow. And that's what ViaCore brings in. So ViaCore is the only tool that can accurately quantify the risk of blood clotting formation in the heart. We basically visualize the blood flow, and we are able to identify the regions of the ventricle where the blood stagnates for longer times. And we have this proprietary software. It's a cloud-based algorithm that can help assess the risk of blood clotting and also identify the patient who will mostly benefit from these blood thinners. It uses standard echocardiographic images. There's no need for new training or hardware, and it will interface with the current hospital IT systems. And we also have a patent submitted, a full patent submitted through UCSD, and we are negotiating the license right now. So the idea is to start from some images that are already acquired, process them on the cloud, and then give the results back to the cardiologist so they can take a more informed decision. So who's ViaCore right now? On the advisory side, we have Juan Carlos Del Alamo, and mechanical and aerospace engineering professor, and Andrew Kahn, a cardiologist at the School of Medicine at UCA San Diego. I'm Lorenzo. I'm finishing up my PhD, and I've been working on this project for the past 3-4 years. And also Ted Daly has given us great contribution from the Office of Innovation and Commercialization, and he has a background in life sciences and biotech companies. So how big is the market we are targeting? So worldwide, there's more than 20 million patients between heart failure and heart attack patients. And what we really want to start targeting at the beginning will be newly diagnosed heart failure patients and large myocardial infarction, large heart attacks. These are the patients that are at the highest risk. And just with this small market in the United States, we have a potential of 250 million per year. And how are we going to deliver the value to our final end user, or the person who's going to benefit is really the patient? So we have to interface ourselves with medical doctors, insurances, and health system, hospitals. So at first, we are going to target early adopter hospitals, offering test licenses and gather data and gain traction. And then eventually, we're going to switch after FDA approval and getting the reimbursement code. We're going to switch to a pay-per-use license, which allows us to directly bill the insurer of the patients. So how does the industry landscape looks like right now? Well, we have other companies that are in the same space. So ultrasound analysis is done, for example, by Epsilon Imaging or TomTech. They only look, though, at the wall motion. They don't really look at the blood flow. Other companies look at the blood flow, like arteries and heart flow, but they use other type of images. So they use MRI or CT scans, and they are really not able to quantify the risk of blood clotting. And then we also have the industry leaders, which are basically GE, Siemens, and Philips, and also the new anticoagulation drugs, NOACs, novel anticoagulation companies, oral anticoagulation drugs. And we hope to build a strategic partnership between these industry leaders and also the pharmaceutical companies, because we would be able to expand their label for some drugs that are already using in order to give the drugs to more patients using our tools, and they could be able to better predict who's needing that drug. So what's the status right now? We have completed the first clinical study on a small population of patients with heart attacks, and we have a pretty good promising results. And then we are, right now, there's a second study on heart failure patients ongoing at UCSD. We're interviewing with key opinion leaders and hospital purchasers, and we also engaged a former FDA employee to start the FDA pre-submission. We're also evaluating the same technologies applied to a bigger population of patients of atrial fibrillation, and we are recently accepted in a few accelerators at UCSD. So this is what the milestones look like, and the first thing we need to do is to complete our minimal viable product and deploy it in order to get some traction, some feedback, and eventually start some partnership. And then in the next 2 to 3 years, we'll have a study which is going to give us the FDA approval. And so this is it, and we are currently seeking about $1 million in seed funding to complete the product development and deploy the product in a few early adopters hospital. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to help.
I think, the most obvious question is IP. I mean,
right. Yeah. Maybe I went fast over that. We have a full patent submitted. Oh, it's pending right now, and it covers the blood stasis as a way to assess the risk of blood clotting and thrombus formation risk in the heart.
And it doesn't have any step-on the patent from Northwestern, which is in a similar space. There's a patent in Northwestern about blood stasis and measuring blood stasis for.
We haven't seen anything about that in the heart.
Okay. Then the other question I have is, I'm assuming that the essentially gold standard for determining blood stasis in the left ventricle is kind of the gold standard for cardiac thrombosis. If that's the case, and the question then becomes, what's the efficacy of your solution relative to what exists now and relative, absolute as well?
Right now, there's really no gold standard to assess the blood stasis, which is what eventually brings up starts the clot, right, the blood clotting. And there are golden standard in assessing the presence of a thrombus, but not in predicting it. Right. So that's what we're really focusing on. And the first clinical study we did in Spain was basically on a small population of patients where we imaged the patients right after the heart attack and after a few months. And then we were able to see that the patient who developed a blood clot would actually have a higher risk measure right at the beginning, so right after the heart attack.
Thanks.
Sure.
Just a few questions. So your initial target market is going to be cardiologists, or are you trying to do a partnership with another?
Right now, we are thinking about partnership with possibly a pharmaceutical company who's trying. There are a few clinical trials right now ongoing to expand the indication for the label of new anticoagulation drugs, and then we believe that we would be able to further widen their market access. So they would be useful. The pharmaceutical company partnership would be useful to have some clinical data to use and to further validate our product. But then on the long term, we would eventually want to go through FDA approval and reimbursement code in order to bill directly the insurers, so eventually Medicare, Medicaid, and insurance companies.
Right. So I have a little experience on the insurance side. So
this is going to be long term down, like.
Right. I get that. But I'm not clinical, right? I'm married to a doctor, but I'm not clinical myself. So just so I'm clear, so you're going to develop a technology where you're going to be able to track the blood flow inside of the heart in addition to just the rhythmic movement of the heart.
Right.
And that's going to inform the cardiologist to the acute nature of the patient that might have a high propensity for a follow-on.
Correct.
Episodic event.
To decide to better, already cardiologists are using these drugs.
Right.
They just don't know, in some population, they don't know who's at higher risk. So they tend either not to do anything, or they just decide based on a measure that is not really scientifically proven. There's something that's blood motion, the wall motion, but it's not something that is, there's nothing that is really objective. There's not an objective measure of risk.
Right, so then to get that into the evidence that the physicians are then gonna implement in their practice takes time for you to get not only through your trials, but just to prove that should be the way physicians should practice.
And that's
then
why
to get that into the academic literature, into the training, to where that's how cardiologists actually practice medicine. That's a long process.
Right, and that's why as a first step, we are targeting pharmaceutical company, and we are also thinking about starting just giving the technology, licensed technology to hospitals so that they can start using it.
And then my last question, just your fundamental business model is what? How do you generate revenue from the technology?
So on the long term, it would be through a pay-per-report fee. And on the short term, it will be through partnership and agreement with the hospital to sell the license on some state-of-the-art or let's say, very advanced hospitals across the nation.
So it's a licensing fee for the technology?
it's a licensing fee for the software,
right?
For the user, yes.
So nice presentation, Frank Stonebanks from Lumiera Capital. So I think your biggest challenges are going to be the sensitivity, specificity issues. That we've talked about this in the past, so you can maybe click to that slide. But it looks like you're making a little improvement, but the question is going to be for a strategic partner and for your regulatory pathway, because right now cardiologists are eyeballing this, but there's no liability against eyeballing. There will be liability if you say you should or shouldn't prescribe a drug based on 85, 50% specificity, sensitivity, or you have those backwards. So talk a bit about how you want to improve those two metrics and how much do they have to be improved by before you're comfortable actually going forward.
Right. So right now there's no really measure of the standard of care. How good is it? So one of the things we want to do is to gather a bunch of patient data and select 10 cardiologists and see what's their actual. This is a ROC curve, right? So this tells you, how good our measure is. Ideally, you want to have 0% false positive and 100% true positive. So for most medical tests, for example, tests that are used on patients with atrial fibrillation, the area under this curve, so 1 is ideal and 0.5 it's random guess. For example, for some tests which are used right now to decide whether or not an atrial fibrillation patient should get anticoagulation drugs, the area under the curve for these cases, it's much more than this. It's 0.6, 0.65, 0.7. And we're also trying to improve the technology by adding some measure of the error that we might be, let's say, the confidence interval for this curve. That's something we're working on. And really, we think that by comparing this curve to what's been currently done now, we will already be much better than that.
Hi, I'm Craig from Medtronic. Great presentation. I was really interested in the slide you had looking at the current landscape. If you go back, it had Siemens on it and a couple other companies. Something we've run into when we look at software solutions that are taking inputs from capital equipment or hardware in a hospital or in a lab is whether or not those systems are open or closed systems and the likelihood that a company could close off a system down the road. So as you look at the landscape and different companies or hospitals where you could sell this to, how many of these ultrasound systems are open for you to take signal from versus have closed systems that you could never operate with?
Great question. So right now we have developed the prototype using GE machines, which allows a lot of raw data to come out. But really the idea is that we could use the final output that cardiologist sees. So we could actually use the ultrasound images, the movie, and the color Doppler signal on top of it. We don't need any additional information from the machine itself. So we could adapt and extend our software to be compatible with all of them. And that's actually one of the steps we want to take in this further product development in the next few months.
Second really quick question. I think you said you were going to submit using a 510K approval process.
Right. We want to schedule a FDA meeting to see what they think about it. And also that would be something where we have actual numbers about the clinical study we're going to perform, how many centers, how many patients. And it's going to give us also a range of how much it's going to be.
Have you identified a predicate device yet for that submission?
So there are a few devices which already look at the blood flow. None of them look at the blood stagnation. So we believe there's some room for playing there with blood, like strain, and that's like the speckle tracking algorithm. We can discuss later about that. But right now, there's nothing really exactly the same, but we believe that there's other technologies which are close enough that the 510K could work.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's finished with questions. And our last presentation of the night in life technologies is Geminance.
Thank you. What's your reaction to the first wrinkle on your face? Many women have tried Botox to reduce wrinkles, but they would never do it again. Even celebrities like Cindy Crawford have been public about their experiences and the fears of Botox. Who wants a painful needle stuck in the face multiple times to reduce wrinkles?
not to mention the resulting pain and bruising, and the other horrible side effects such as drooping eyelid. We are Gemini's. We have developed a non-invasive, injection-free, and painless topical Botox for customers who are terrified of injections. We have done proof of concept in the laboratory using the same type of mouse that Allergan has used to test the efficacy of their injectable Botox. So this is what a mouse's foot would normally look like if you pick them up. The toes naturally spread. Botox reduces wrinkle by paralyzing the muscle into which it is injected. We have injected Botox into the right foot of a mouse. As we expected, Botox paralyzes the muscle. The toes can no longer spread. Our most exciting data is in the last photo. We have applied our topical Botox onto the right foot of another mouse, and we've seen the same muscle relaxation effect as the injectable Botox. The toes can no longer spread. We are very excited about the results, and we are in preparation for patent application before we move to preclinical trial. Our market is huge. There's 7 million procedures performed just in the United States. The global spending on Botox is estimated to be $2 billion, and is still growing at 10% every year. The United States has contributed $1.2 billion of the global market. And this is just the injectable Botox market. We are going to expand the market by attracting new customers who would love to have the wrinkle-free results but are terrified of injections. And this potential market is estimated to be $120 million. Botox needs to be applied by a trained medical professionals, including plastic surgeons and trained nurses. So our business model is to sell our product directly to cosmetic centers, where the medical professionals could incorporate our product into their services and serve our end users. Botox is regulated by the FDA, so we would need to seek FDA's approval before we commercialize it. We plan to outsource the production of our topical Botox as well as preclinical trials to contract research organizations as well as contract manufacturing facilities. We have 2 separate go-to-market strategies targeting doctors as well as end users. For the doctors, we are going to set up a sales team. We would also provide free medical training, and we would go to conferences such as the American Society of Plastic Surgeons to promote our product. For our consumers, we are going to use social media to raise awareness of our topical Botox. We have a direct competitor, Ontario, in the market. It is acquired by Allergan for $90 million last year. It has a nanotechnology-based topical Botox in the pipeline that is currently in phase 2 clinical trial. However, we strongly believe that our product is much better than theirs because our drug delivery system would trigger less immune response, so it's going to be much, much safer to use. We have 3 non-direct competitors in the market, including Allergan, Galderma, and Merz. Our competitive advantages over the injectable Botox is very obvious because we don't require any injection. We're going to provide a painless and comfortable procedure for our customers. I'm Jing-Si Lee, co-founder and CEO of Gemini's. We have a very diverse team with 2 PhDs who have worked at top research institutes. In combination, we have over 10 years of leadership experiences at high-tech and biotech industries. We're very lucky to have 2 advisors so far, Brenda Wallach, who is an expert in intellectual property, and Daryl Drinan, who is a successful serial entrepreneur in biotech industries. We're raising $1 million seed funding. We plan to use the funding to develop a formulation and to begin production of our product. We would also use the funding to complete preclinical trial to prove the safety and efficacy of our topical Botox. With your support, we're dedicated to revolutionize the Botox market. Thank you.
First question from the little one here.
why did you start this company?
Because I have talked with many, many women who'd love to have the wrinkle-free results, but they would never do Botox because they're terrified of needles, right? Do you like needles, Remy? No? Okay, I guess nobody does. So that's where my passion is, to provide an option for all women to stay at the best age, to have a wrinkle-free, results. So that's why I started the company. Thank you for the question.
So it's a little challenging because we don't know what the product is, actually. So you haven't filed the IP yet, right?
No.
So you can't really talk about that. But you did talk a little bit about immune response. And so I'm curious, just based on that one quick comment about safety issues that you might think might come. Because although it might be a more convenient delivery system, if patients have autoimmune reactions, that's probably not so good.
Right. Yeah.
Do you fear that's going to be something that you might see with your product? Or
what's the question again?
the immune response issues with your product.
Because we have the inventor of the technology, he has some publication on the safety of the drug delivery system. So we are very sure, we cannot talk about what it is, but we are very sure that it's much safer to use our drug delivery system compared to Ontario's nanotechnology-based drug delivery system.
What about Relance? They have a gel-based one, and they're already to stage. I think they're through stage 3 trials.
They actually failed phase 3 clinical trial last summer.
Okay.
Right, and we looked into their drug delivery system, way too complicated, and it's impossible for the drug delivery system to penetrate the outer layer, that skin cells of the skin, and we have a way to get around it.
Okay. And that similar thing is that, so you saw that the 3 things that you're solving are, and nobody likes injections that can cause bruising, but the third one was that it can cause side effects, dripping, and other things. But that's in a targeted injectable. How do you get around those things with a topical cream that obviously is going to be less, or is going to be broader? You're going to put it over a Sahara surface area. How do you solve the problem of making it more targeted to exactly the outcome that the patient wants?
That's a very good question. Think about injection. It's a one-point delivery. So it's like dropping a tiny water balloon into the neuron muscle and hoping it doesn't diffuse too much to the unwanted areas. And for the topical Botox, it's a very even absorption through the skin. So we think the diffusion level can be minimized greatly. So that's why we think it's a much better way to deliver Botox, and it's going to minimize the side effects such as drooping eyelid.
And then my last question would be, I would assume that if you're injecting, you're using a very, very tiny amount, whereas if you're spreading it over a larger surface, you're going to have to use a larger amount of the toxin. How do you get around some of the potential safety issues of absorption, not only at the site of where you're putting it, but absorption into the bloodstream or anything else if your technology enables that?
One of the studies we're going to do in the preclinical studies is to radio label our product so we can actually see how much are absorbed through the skin and where do they go to. So we're going to demonstrate that in our preclinical studies. So far in the laboratory, the mouse that we've been working with, applying our product topically, and we haven't really observed any negative effects. I mean, the Botox eventually got degraded inside the body of the mouse, and they seem to be happy afterwards.
Have you had the results validated by an independent third-party lab on the mice specifically? Or this is all internal work?
This is internal work, but when we measure the effect of the Botox, we actually use the 3 technicians in the laboratory who don't know what mice has been applied, or has been done for what. So they basically went in and looked at the 2 mouse that we worked on and measure how spread the toes are and give a score. So we actually use the score to measure the effectiveness of the product. So it's not the person who has done the work who did the measurement, who evaluated the efficacy of the product. We have used the 3 technicians who had no idea what we are doing with the mouse.
And last quick question, is the $1 million going to get you to IND package phase 1 start, or how far will it get you?
It's going to get us to the IND application, yes.
IND package complete for $1 million?
Yes. I don't plan to take salary, so
Quick question here, Sean with Next Wave Ventures. Is there an over-the-counter solution that you guys can look at that can maybe, avoid or, get out of some of the FDA regulation? Maybe it's a little bit lesser of a dose. I don't know a lot about this market, but I'm just thinking if there is something you can, and maybe it's all in the positioning. Maybe you don't call it, Botox, but it's a skin tightening cream. I mean, I don't know what it can be, but is there a solution there too that you don't have to have a professional administer it and go through the FDA regulation?
With our drug delivery system, we can engineer pretty much any big molecule to penetrate the skin. So maybe further down the road, we could come up with something that's not toxic, not like Botox that needs to be used by trained medical professionals. So it can be something that we could explore in the future. But for Botox, the active ingredient, the neurotoxin in Botox is called botulinum toxin. It is a neurotoxin, and there is no way we can get around it. It has to be, it's regulated by the FDA, and it has to be applied by trained medical professionals.
So in that case, if it's being applied by a trained medical professional whose current business model is the injection of the Botox, what's the incentive for that professional to want to switch to a topical versus an injectable, which probably seems like you should be able to get paid more because you're doing something that seems to be more clinically?
First of all, our cost of goods sold is probably going to be the same as the injectable Botox. It's essentially a protein, and it's going to cost us about the same to make the product. So our price, we can easily price it at the same as the injectable Botox. And then we've talked with the cosmetic centers. First of all, our product is going to attract new customers. We have talked with customers who could never take injectable Botox, but they're very excited about our product. They're willing to try it. They're willing to enroll it in our clinical trials. And second, it's not going to affect the current customer. We've talked with injectable Botox users who are very willing to switch to our product. So the cosmetic centers, they are going to have, their current customers is going to be stable. They would either switch to our product or they would stay with the injectable Botox. Either way, they're not going to lose their current customer. And they have a great incentive to introduce our product into their cosmetic clinics because we are going to attract new customers.
So what percentage, what's the addressable market in total numbers of people who would take Botox or who might want to take Botox, and what percentage of them are currently taking it?
You're talking about the current Botox users number?
Yeah, well, no, I'm talking about there's a market out there that are not getting, as you say, not getting it because they're afraid of shots.
Right.
So what is that number of people that potentially could use Botox but don't do it because of the shots? And what percentage of that number is actually taking Botox today?
So far, we've found a few. We basically ask everybody that we encounter in our lives saying, oh, are you willing to take a topical Botox if you're not considering injectable Botox? We found some of them. And there are 10% of the population who are terrified of needles. So we sort of came up with the $120 million potential market using that number. Yeah.
And that's going to conclude our questions for
Thank you.
tonight.
Just in 20 million Francis, Santa Fe, and La Jolla.
So we're going to have judges deliberation. They're going to go off in the lobby and have a discussion about which companies they think is going to be the top winner. And in the meantime, I wanted to, if the judges can actually head out, that would be fantastic. In the meantime, I did skip over something in the beginning of my slides, and that was an overview of what our companies have done in the past 10 years. So for those of you who may know, we have had an 85% success rate of companies that are still operating or have been acquired. We've given awards to over 40 companies, and that totals to about more than $1 million. And out of those companies, the 85%, the total combined valuations have amounted to over $1.2 billion. Now, this is a really staggering rate, especially for the entrepreneurial ecosystem, as often cases it's a much smaller percentage that are still operating and not as high of a valuation. So these companies that you see here tonight are going to go on to do some amazing, significant things. So One of the new awards that we, as the Entrepreneur Challenge team, wanted to put together was to honor someone in the community who inspires the future generations of entrepreneurs. The entrepreneur that goes through and has the crazy ideas and will go and pursue it until he reaches it. And this entrepreneur actually came to grad school, and the first thing he did was going around to all the graduate students and told them that he would cure cancer, and everyone blew him off. And he continued to persist, and that company then competed in our competition, but they didn't make the finals the first year, but they came back the second year to win it. And that year, he did. And from then on, he went on to raise over $36 million to create a company that is going to help cure cancer. And he's doing that by creating a cancer diagnostic platform so that he can detect cancer early in order to use all the proper medicine to be able to cure it. And that entrepreneur is Raj Krishnan. Let's give a round of applause for Raj. As a token of our gratitude, we want to give you the Entrepreneur of the Year award. And one of the things that you all probably know, if you know Raj, is his infectious enthusiasm. He has not only gone on to win our competition, but he's continued to support our organization throughout the years. And one of the things that we wanted to do to pass on this tradition of Entrepreneur of the Year award, which will continue from here on out.
Is that a cape?
Is a cape.
Oh God, is that a cape? Are you serious? All right. All right.
Because it takes a Superman to be an entrepreneur. And Raj is a great embodiment of a Superman entrepreneur. So Raj, thank you.
So, thank you very much. This is an amazing award. I was not expecting the cape. You're gonna have to resize this when you have somebody. I'm kind of small, so if you have somebody like 6'4", this is gonna choke them to death. So first of all, thank you to everybody. But before I begin, I just want to say they've done many surveys about what people are most afraid of, and number 2 on the list is always death. And then number 1, believe it or not, is the fear of public speaking. So if you're ever at a funeral, people would rather be the guy in the coffin than the guy giving the eulogy. So I just wanted to give a round of applause to all the people who had the guts and the courage to come out and speak, because I absolutely know how difficult it is to actually go through this since I had to do it myself. So thank you very much for that. So I'm going to put this on the ground real quick, because second thing I want to say is, so the winner of the first year, Brad, he sold his company for $85 million. And the winner of the second year is currently in Monaco closing deals with a model in his arm. So you guys have set the bar a little too high. So I'm going to have to announce I'm running for president or something. So, but we've been incredibly fortunate in being able to raise the amount of money that I have, which is actually about $40 million, including non-dilutive financing, since the beginning of the Entrepreneur Challenge. And I couldn't have done it without first, thanking a whole bunch of people who have actually helped me get here. First is, going through the Entrepreneur Challenge, Nikki Justice Truitt. At the time she was Justice, now she's Truitt. We have Nea Patadia. We had, now is Alex Boone. Thank you very much for the actual, presentation of the award and for selecting me. Danny Katishin, who's been very involved. John Yamauchi. Rajesh Grover, who helped and has continued to help, and there's a score of other people that he's already covered. We owe a huge debt of gratitude to all the students who do this, but at the same time, we also owe a massive debt of gratitude to all the judges as well as the audience participants who come to this and help rally it forward. 2 of my judges who are still here, actually, and they volunteer often for this, are Greg Horwitz and Ricardo Dos Santos, who's sitting over there. So both of them deserve a fantastic round of applause for all of the hard work and help they've done. So thank you very much. So I've been given the unenviable task of doing somewhere between 2 to 10 minutes because I got to stall until the judges come back. So in case I finish early, I'm going to do like a song and dance number. So just letting you know. So what you see over there was about 10 years ago, 7 years ago in my happier times when you could see me holding the giant cardboard check for $40,000. Back then it was the $80,000 Entrepreneur Challenge. And so getting about $42,000 in cash and prizes was fantastic. In fact, I won $50,000 that year. Unfortunately, that year was 2008, which means that nobody wanted to give you money for anything. It didn't matter how amazing you were. It was just an absolute brutal slog. But the Entrepreneur Challenge did a fantastic job basically setting me up, after which I went into other business plan competitions, won them all, but nobody sort of cared. I had the same problem that you heard from Brad earlier. Luckily for me, there's a lot of very wealthy, well-connected entrepreneurs in San Diego. So I took a slightly different tactic. I just went to a bunch of rich people and begged them for money. Luckily for me, that actually worked, believe it or not. So we talked about our technology, which I'm going to cover in a second. But we managed to actually go there, have a wonderful conversation with a lot of good entrepreneurs, with a funny story that I'm going to say in a second on how we got there. But it seems amazing winning about $50,000, but what they don't tell you is that all of it goes back to UCSD just to get the exclusive license. So all I got out of this was a $50 guitar. So that check is, unfortunately, when you try to cash it, doesn't really come back to you. So. But I was very lucky. The person that you see up there with me is Dr. Michael Heller. He, I, and 2 other founders actually started the company together. There's still the 2 of us left now, about 7 years in. So we've been pretty fortunate to do that. So, what did we actually start out with? And our goal was to sort of defeat cancer. We were pretty fortunate. Right now we have about 25, 26 full-time employees, about 5 or 6 part-timers and 10 consultants. You can see the group there. It's actually diversified over the years. About 50% of them are UC grads, so we owe the UC system a huge debt of gratitude. We've had a lot of amazing people join us from it. And we have about 19 issued patents, 15 of them in the United States, and 4 of them worldwide, and a bunch more patents that are actually currently converting. And it's all based off of our current technology, which is AC electrokinetics. So this is the same technology I presented about 7 years ago. The idea was to use AC electric fields to actually isolate particles directly from your blood. And at the time, it was actually considered extremely novel. It's about 7, 10 years ago when I was doing my PhD thesis at UC San Diego under Dr. Michael Heller, who I showed previously. But now, everybody sort of knows this. This is isolating circulating tumor DNA, and then you can actually sequence it, and you can identify what's going on. But at that time, they were like, what are these particles of blood floating around in cancer patients that don't seem to exist in normal patients? So we built a completely different orthogonal method of being able to isolate this. And based off of identification of the amount of DNA, it turns out that it correlates pretty nicely with whether or not your treatment's working, so whether your tumor's growing or not. So if your cancer, it's really simple. I try to explain it like it's a reverse stock market. So if the amount of this tumor DNA that's floating around in your blood goes up, it's bad. And if it goes down, it's good. And if it's flat, it's stable. So it's really easy to understand. Up, bad, down, good, flat, stable. And it gives you a very nice way to do it. In fact, I call it sort of short selling cancer. And the methodology is anybody can understand, and you can just follow your numbers. And as those numbers go up, you can switch the drug. If the numbers go down or they stay flat, you just keep them on the same drug because the drug's working. As a result, you can now identify in a rapid manner which type of drug is actually working for which patient in a much more faster method. So right now it takes about 6 to 9 months to be able to identify if your treatment's actually working, which is part of the reason that a lot of people die with cancer, stage 3 and 4, is because you've less than a year survival rate and you're being given a drug where you have about a 10 to 20% chance that it's actually working. Now imagine if I could very quickly tell you that drug is working or not working and allow you to just switch the drug. So regardless of the cost of the drug, you have a huge amount of savings in terms of money, and you have to do that because the new drugs that are coming out are about $150,000 a year. But in addition to that, you actually have a lot of lives saved. Like imagine if you don't actually have to undergo therapies that aren't doing anything for you. Remember this, folks, this stuff isn't candy. If it ain't helping you, it's hurting you. So it's very important that you identify that. And so that's what we actually ended up building here. So we went into two different sort of groups here. We started going into cancer research. You guys are probably, some of you are familiar with the term exosomes. Turns out we can actually have a research use platform. We got our CE mark for Europe. And we've been working on cancer research and being able to isolate these exosomes. So this is a new hot field. Currently, it takes about a day and a half to be able to isolate this, and we do it in about 20 minutes. And by the way, the clinical oncology space that we're doing for treatment response monitoring takes about 3 drops of blood, about 150 microliters, and you get the result back in less than an hour. So it's very cheap, very fast, works with hospital workflows. You get the data in the same amount of time. And in fact, one of the things that we haven't talked about here is we're working on a next generation version of this system while we get this in. So this is a benchtop device that's actually going to go, you can see it in the center there, that actually goes in a hospital lab. But what we really found out is because we use electric fields to isolate this, I can actually do the same test off of your cell phone. So we have a smartphone version that I'm building that you can eventually put in point-of-care systems as well as in anybody's house when you're running this test. And all you're going to do is just put your phone, connect it in, and you can run the exact same test that you're running in a hospital lab. So it's an extremely powerful, simple version. It works with any smartphone. Use your camera to actually do the isolation. So what we've done since then is that we've actually started a clinical trial. You can see that clinical trials gov.id. Anybody who's curious can go online and take a look at what we're doing. We have about 15 sites. And the goal is to be able to follow about 225 patients over a period of time and to identify that I can, one, identify that whether or not your treatment is working with the gold standard that's out there, which is currently imaging. It takes about 3 to 6 months, and they do a bunch of imaging standards, and they'll tell you whether or not it's working. And then 2 is what I'm getting in between time points, and the goal is to see, can I actually identify it faster? And if I can do it faster, my goal is to actually get it to where it's every 3 to 6 weeks as opposed to 6 to 9 months. And that'll be a tremendous savings of both costs as well as lives, which is the most important thing that we're doing here. And all of this with a few drops of blood. So I know I'm talking, sounding like the Theranos person, but I have a PhD, so that's actually allowed. So forgive me for that. So what's next is a sort of a brief idea is, we're undergoing our clinical trial. We're actually fundraising right now for a lot, the funny thing is once you start one of these machines, you need a lot more money. And as you get more and more successful, it needs an even bigger sort of funding source. So we're in the process of fundraising for commercialization, which is probably going to be about the last round that we need. So I'm trying to make it a big one because I'm sick and tired of fundraising roughly every 2 years. It gets very tiresome doing that. But we've been very lucky to be very successful and we have fantastic investors. So we got one more round to go, after which we actually go to market with our product and our device and we start launching this everywhere. We anticipate doing that sometime around next year. So that's what we're actually aiming for. So it's been a long, difficult road getting here, and it's been the most amazing road. If I could go back and do it again, of course, there's a couple of things I'd change, but overall, wouldn't change a thing. And this is all thanks to the UC Entrepreneur Challenge for giving, a skinny little kid with a funny name an opportunity to build something that he couldn't do anywhere else. So I'm forever grateful for that, and I want to thank Alex and the rest of the team, and you guys are doing a fantastic job, and keep it up, all of you, and it doesn't matter how hard it is, you persevere. Doggedness is the key, because as long as you keep going at it, trust me, you will succeed. So good luck, everybody. Thank you.
Enjoy that, Kate.
Appreciate it.
So it seems like the judges are having a hard time deciding. I think they'll be here in a couple of minutes. So I'll talk a little bit about the other award that we're doing. And the reason why I can't do it, fully announce it, is because it's actually giving to one of the judges. And this award is Volunteer of the Year. And as I mentioned, we're starting this volunteer program because we have realized that your time is the most valuable thing that you have, and you giving us your time tonight, other events, helping us mentor the teams is extremely valuable. And one gentleman in particular has stood out to us, not only this year, but also in the past. And I will mention his name when he gets in. But he is an inspiration to many. I work with him very closely on many different aspects. He's part of one of my companies, and he mentors a lot of the entrepreneurs that have come out of UC San Diego. And he's kind of made it his mission. one of the things that, simple question that I asked them, what gets you out of bed every day? Right? For most entrepreneurs, it's the companies, but when people have been very successful, what does get them out of bed every day? And the answer that this gentleman has is to work with these crazy entrepreneurs, because he just loves the excitement and he loves how the way these entrepreneurs act day to day so that they can change the world and be the next generation. So I'm excited to announce when he gets in. So we do have third place that was announced. So we had our semifinals a little over a month ago. And we had a panel of judges, very similar like we did tonight, who decided on third place. And third place takes away $10,000 in cash and in-kind services. And we will be announcing the third place, but one of the things that is really interesting is the caliber of companies that have come through. We see a very diverse group of entrepreneurs, and this round, the life sciences in particular, we're seeing a lot of different ways that these entrepreneurs come to us. So typically it's either maybe been a PhD route or an MBA, but now we're starting to see these undergraduates who are coming from senior design projects, things that they have 6 months to do, they have no previous knowledge, they just are given a problem and are able to create a solution. And so some of these third place winners are really some notable. I would have loved to have them present tonight. Logistically, it doesn't work. But there's some incredible entrepreneurs. If you have a chance, come talk with them at the showcase or after the event, as you know, they're the next generation of entrepreneurs. Are we all good? All right. So we'll just give it another couple of minutes, and they're bringing in the rest of the checks, and we'll have the judges come up on stage. All right, so third, oh yeah, if we can have you guys all come up. So third place for the high-tech track, this was already announced, is Barstar. Let's give a round of applause for Barstar. He was unable to make it tonight, but we're accepting it in his honor.
I guess.
If we can have the judges actually come closer. Yeah. We got the camera in the way back. Yeah.
Smaller kids in the back. Yeah, perfect.
All right. And for second place, we have weights. Let's give a round of applause. Weights will be receiving $30,000 in in-kind, cash and in-kind services. Congratulations. Which means that first place, taking away $60,000 in cash and in-kind services, coming back from last year as a finalist, is ARC. Congrats. Congratulations. That's over there. Yeah. So for third place, for clean technologies, we have a waterless car wash solution, and the company is Moby Wash. They were unable to make it tonight as well, so we're accepting it in their honor.
And we'll spend it in their honor.
All right. And winning $30,000, getting second place, is Shared Energy Resources. Congratulations. Which means that taking first place with $60,000 of cash and in-kind services is South 8 Technologies. We got a big team.
I know, we got Tim coming up too. Oh, you do?
They really want that money.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to huddle around.
All right, please. Congratulations. Yeah, great job.
Great job.
Congratulations.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. You want to hold it? Do you want to hold it?
Sure.
Congratulations.
Yes, great job.
And for our Life Technologies track, it was extremely competitive this year. And this company is helping to end tremors. Tremor End. They aren't. They actually had to go to finish some work, so we'll be accepting it in their honor or taking all the money. All right. All right, and taking second place for the Life Technologies track with $30,000 is Geminance. Congratulations. Congratulations. Which means taking first place with $60,000 of cash and in-kind services is Veocor. Thank you. Congratulations. And before we end, I did want to give the final award for tonight. And as I mentioned before, while the judges were out, this award is for Volunteer of the Year. And this gentleman, as I mentioned before, loves waking up and working with the crazy entrepreneurs that are going to change the future. And this gentleman is Greg Horowitz. Thank you so much, Greg, for your dedication for all the years. And with that, If you are a student in the audience, we're recruiting. We have a very competitive recruiting process for some of the brightest entrepreneurs and students at the UCSD. So come join our team to really help our organization grow next year. Thank you all for coming.